Chapter 2500. The truth was right in front of his eyes. Chu Yang, who was speechless, was dumbfounded. Jianghu and the other two girls laughed heartily. It was really rare to see a certain king of hell being ridiculed like this. This round of ridicule was truly incisive, and every sentence was a classic. Minister Chu's face was dull. He had a belly full of anger, but he couldn't vent it. Jianghu and the other two girls laughed. They felt very good to see Chu Yang finally suffer. It was really infuriating to compare oneself to others. When the fishing rod was in the hands of the man in white, it began to whiz again. It seemed that another big fish had taken the bait. The man in white looked at Chu Yang from the corner of his eyes as he lifted the rod. He mocked, "This time it's all thanks to you. Although you couldn't catch the fish and were caught by the fish, you set up a good nest for me. Otherwise, I'm afraid that I wouldn't have been able to lure this big guy over. Catching this fish, at least half of the credit goes to you." Hearing this praise, Chu Yang was speechless. He gritted his teeth and said angrily, "Fuck. If you can talk less, you'll definitely catch more fish." The man in white said, "I love to see people embarrassed. I haven't seen it in a long time. I'm so happy." Chu Yang opened his mouth and said resentfully, "It's really rare to see people like you." The man in white laughed and said, "You're the same." As he spoke, another big fish was dragged in front of him. The white-robed man suddenly turned around, and a splashing sound was heard. The white-robed man only cared about ridiculing Chu Yang, and also looked at Chu Yang's expression with interest. In a moment of carelessness, the fishing line was broken by that big fish. The big fish shook its tail, shaking its head and tail. It dived into the lake confidently, like a general who had won a battle. It returned triumphantly. The man in white beat his chest and stamped his feet. What a pity! Chu Yang finally found a chance to take revenge. He clicked his tongue and said, "Oh my, such a big fish, what a pity. Why did you let it escape? Was it you who caught the fish, or was the fish playing with you? Oh my." The man in white looked at him speechlessly. He said, "You don't have to be like this." Chu Yang snorted and said, "Embarrassing, too embarrassing. This is purely a matter of IQ. Even the fish that is hooked can run away." True. Sigh, if I were to say that you're a good-for-nothing, I'd be a little embarrassed. If I were to say that you're stupid, I'd be somewhat unable to bear it. But if I were to say that you're stupid, I'd be unable to justify it. But if I were to say that you're conceited and deserved it, you'd definitely be angry. You're really angry? How awkward. This is so awkward. Before he could finish his sentence, the man in white had already raised his pole and smashed it down. Chu Yang dodged with a jump. But he was still laughing heartily at Chu Yang's misfortune. The man in white clenched his teeth. After a long while of resentment, he went back to his fishing line and started fishing again. He murmured, "There are too many people in this world who rejoice in other people's misfortune. There are a total of 7 families living here, and their masters are all very good at it. Now, there's a newcomer, and he's actually the same. Sure enough, enemies are destined to meet. My path is not lonely." Just like that, 2 men and 3 women, the 5 experts swept through the sky with a wave of their hands. The 5 people who had joined hands to look down on the Heaven Imperial Court were actually fishing here. Moreover, they were fishing in high spirits, and the people who were watching them fishing were also in high spirits. It was clear that with a wave of his hand, he could make all the fish in the blue waves fly ashore, but he insisted on using the most primitive method to fish. From start to finish, no one asked for each other's names. The sky gradually darkened, and the white-robed man finally finished his work. When he lifted the fishing net, there was a clattering sound inside. Apart from some small fish that weighed a few kilograms, there were actually more than 10 big fish that weighed more than 5 kilograms. The results of the battle were very obvious. They were very, 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 very rich. This is enough for a meal. The white-robed man smiled cheerfully and released all the small fish back into the lake. He said, "Please, please come with me. Today's meal, we must have a good meal. Otherwise, it would be a waste of all these delicious big fish." My wife is a first-class culinary expert," Chu Yang said cheerfully. I was just about to disturb you and taste the legendary first-class delicacies. When they heard about cooking, Jianghu and Tai Butian's expressions turned awkward at the same time. The two women were clueless when it came to cooking. They knew how to cook well, but they didn't know anything about how to make it taste good. Only Wu Qianqian was quite delighted, because Wu Qianqian was a culinary expert herself. Back then, in order to cook a delicious meal for someone, Wu Qianqian had put in a lot of hard work. As they walked into the manor, the white-robed man laughed softly and said, "Oh, I forgot. When a distinguished guest comes, we should find a few more to accompany the guest. In this case, I'm afraid these fish won't be enough." As he said that, he casually grabbed behind him and said apologetically, "There are priorities. I can't talk about it today, so I can only be rude for once. Please don't blame me, please don't blame me." Before he finished speaking, the lake water splashed loudly, and more than 10 big fish that weighed more than 10 kilograms were caught out of the lake by him from hundreds of feet away. The fish were actually affected. They were still struggling and twisting in the air. The scene was extremely spectacular. However, this scene was nothing to Chu Yang and the others. The four of them could easily do this. Compared to catching fish of the same weight, it was much, much easier. It was a piece of cake. Then the fishing net suddenly opened, and the big fish fell into the net. The white-robed man tightened the net and said, "Excuse me, please." Chu Yang couldn't help but click his tongue. How many guests does this guy intend to find? Looking at the situation, the weight of these fishes that were caught later, it seems that even if he invited another 50 people to eat together, they might not be able to finish it. Then the white-robed man pursed his lips and shouted, "Those around, there are guests coming. Come and accompany them. If you miss it, you'll miss it." His voice was clear and melodious, but it wasn't harsh at all. It rushed up to the sky and exploded loudly. It actually spread far and wide. Instantly voices came from other directions, and they were even more elegant. A voice said, "Who's here? Why is it so grand? Is sister-in-law cooking fish again? Is it enough to eat?" Another person said, "Should I go alone or with the whole family?" Another person said, "This guy isn't lying, right?" The other three voices said at the same time, "It's rare for this stingy guy to invite guests. No matter who comes, let's go and accompany them. Everyone, bring your family and eat until he's poor. Let's feel heartache for a few decades and see if he can be stingy again." This suggestion received the approval of the other 5 people in time. Their voices fell. The corner of Chu Yang's mouth twitched. "The guests you mentioned just now can't be more than 100 people, right?" The white-robed man looked up and thought for a while. He smiled and said, "I'm afraid it's more than that. Speaking of which, there aren't many male guests, only one. But if we add their wives, and my wives, there should be at least 130 or 140 people." At first, the 4 of them didn't quite understand. After thinking carefully, what? Chu Yang was the first to be dumbfounded. He covered his mouth and was speechless. Mo Qingwu, Tai Butian and Wu Qianqian even opened their small mouths at once. Then, the way they looked at Chu Yang instantly became unusually pleasing to the eye. It's better to be a man. He can't be considered a *** at all. Didn't you hear? There's a total of 7 people, plus the wives. There's a total of 130 or 140 people. In other words, on average, each of them has more than 20 wives. Oh my God. In comparison, Chu Yang only has a total of 4 wives. What a rare and loyal good man this is. At this moment, the 3 women were once again glad that their eyesight was too sharp. They were actually able to find him among all the people. They were too lucky. Entering the manor, Chu Yang had always thought that he had already seen all the beauties. He would never be mesmerized again. Mo Qingwu, Wu Qianqian, Tai Butian, and Zi Xiecheng were all exceptional beauties in the world. They each had their own unique beauty. Their facial features were picturesque, graceful, gorgeous, as beautiful as peaches and plums, as cold as frost. But at this moment, seeing the beauties here, he felt that his eyesight was still limited. He sighed in amazement at the wonders of creation. Today, he finally saw what it meant to have beauties everywhere. The beauties who came out to greet him were all peerless in their generation. They were all curvaceous, and it could be seen that each and every one of them possessed an extraordinary cultivation. Every one of them seemed to have once been an influential figure in Jianghu. Chu Yang instantly had a guess based on the sharpness that they had inadvertently revealed. Every one of them was very confident, very intelligent, and very dignified and virtuous. Chu Yang quietly counted. 1, 2, 3, 17. That's really not a small number. Chu Yang thought. Just as he was sizing up the beauties, he felt a sharp pain in 3 parts of his waist at the same time. Grimacing, he turned his head to look. He saw Mo Qingwu, Tai Budian, and Wu Chanxian greeting those women warmly with smiles on their faces. At the same time, their 3 little hands each grabbed a piece of soft flesh on their waist. They were either spinning counterclockwise or clockwise, or clockwise or counterclockwise irregularly. Chu Yang turned all the pain into a muffled groan. He secretly complained in his heart. The consequences of 3 women being jealous together are actually so serious. You should call them sister-in-law. The woman in white clearly saw that Chu Yang was now being tortured, but she pretended not to see. She said with a fake smile. The other women also saw Chu Yang trying to hide his miserable appearance. They all covered their mouths and snickered. Their smiles and frowns were even more magnificent and intoxicating. The friendship between women was really indescribable. It was the first time they met, but they felt like old friends at first sight. They clustered around Mo Qingwu and the other 2 as they walked in. Which one of these women wasn't smart? They could tell the relationship between Chu Yang and the 3 women at a glance. A few words without leaving any trace and they became closer. Mo Qingwu and the other 2 came as guests. Of course, they also spoke carefully. Everyone walked in happily. Only the woman in white and Chu Yang were left standing at the door, ready to welcome the others. Overtime tonight, explode tomorrow. The college entrance exam is over. Tomorrow, we'll celebrate with explode. Starting from 1 p.m. tomorrow, I'll make up for it first, then explode. I don't know how much I can write. Chapter 2501. Those guys who made the noise just now will be here soon. Don't be scared. The man in white smiled. No, absolutely not. Chu Yang vowed solemnly. Although he said so, when the big group really came over, Chu Yang was really shocked. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. A large group of beautiful women flew over with an overwhelming fragrance. They were like countless colorful butterflies dancing in the air. Every one of them was a peerless beauty. Every one of them was devastatingly beautiful. Every one of them had a completely different temperament. Some were gentle and demure. Some were as cold as ice. Some were as cold as the moon. Some were as proud as the frost. Some were graceful and elegant. Some were gentle and lovely. Some were lively and cute. Some were fresh and pure. Some were as sharp as swords. Some were as sharp as knives. They had a myriad of manners and were devastatingly beautiful. Chu Yang's eyes widened. He suddenly felt that all the beauties in the universe had gathered here. Oh my God! Chu Yang opened his mouth wide. Hey, 4th brother, who is this lecherous little guy? A rough voice said. That's right. One look and I can tell that he has never seen a beauty before. He has never seen the world. A disdainful voice said. Hey, wake up. Those are all my wives. Are you looking for a beating? Damn you. How are they all your wives? There are so many here. My brother's wives are all here. Especially my wife. If you talk nonsense again, I will beat you to death. The scene could be said to be very messy. However, the beauties didn't pay any attention to the clamoring men. Each and every one of them smiled and greeted Chu Yang. They rushed into the house like a gust of wind. Then, they heard a burst of cheers from inside. Then, there was chatter. It was as if there were 10,000 birds in the house. As the saying goes, the noise made by a woman can be compared to 500 ducks. Then, 2 people would be more than 1,000 ducks. But if more than 100 women were together, not to mention how many ducks they could be compared to, their aura would definitely shake the sky. Outside the door, the 8 men all had a headache. Speaking of which, there are not many things in this world that I am afraid of. But when they are together, it is definitely the thing that I am most afraid of. One of the guys had a square face and looked quite dignified. At this moment, however, he looked like he had a headache. The others also sighed in agreement. Only the white-robed man laughed heartily. Don't be surprised, the strange will be defeated. Today, we have an important guest. Let me introduce him to you. This little brother just arrived today. You can all call him brother. This guy had never asked for Chu Yang's name from the beginning to the end. Now that he was introducing Chu Yang, the process seemed even weirder. Of course, eccentric people were capable of doing strange things. However, he was used to it, and the strange thing was self-defeating. However, the white-robed man wasn't the only weirdo here. The other people didn't seem to care at all. One of them laughed and said, "Hello, little brother. You can call me boss. I am the oldest among my brothers. I'm the second in age, so I'll be happy if you call me second brother, so please don't call me that, I'm third brother. In fact, I've always wanted to be the boss." Bullshit, who doesn't want to be the boss? Do you think I don't want to? Unfortunately, I'm only ranked 5th. I'm number 1. I'm 7th brother, the last one. However, I'll definitely be the boss one day. I'm 4th brother. The one who's neither above nor below. The white-robed man who was fishing smiled and looked at Chu Yang. Brother, are you 8th brother? With this question, everyone's eyes focused on Chu Yang. Chu Yang touched his nose and smiled bitterly. If we're ranked according to age, it seems so. However, I really don't want to be 8th brother. I also want to be the boss, very much. I'm used to being the boss. I won't be used to being the boss suddenly. Ha! Everyone laughed. That's great, that's great. I'm finally not the youngest one. A certain 7th brother exclaimed. Then, as if they had known each other for many years, these old men entered the door side by side. He shouted, "Hurry up and cook. Sister-in-law, cook fish. My wife, make mushrooms. Second sister-in-law, make bamboo shoots. Who knows how to make bear paws? Do you still have the meat of that black deer? Give me 50 kilograms. This guy really didn't treat himself as an outsider. He actually started to give orders. 50 kilograms, Chu Yang grinned. This was a medium-sized living room. However, it was more than enough to accommodate 200 to 300 people eating at the same time. The women who weren't good at cooking were all gathered together to talk. There were also a dozen or so people who voluntarily went into the kitchen to help cook. Obviously, they had held such gatherings countless times. Each of them was familiar with the process. They did what they could and knew how to do. If they didn't know how to do it, they would just stay away from the fire and not cause trouble for others. Not long after, an unusually rich aroma floated out of the kitchen. It was refreshing. Outside, 8 men were sitting at the table in the center. They were chatting with each other and telling jokes. However, none of them mentioned anything about the outside world. Not even a word. When they looked at Chu Yang, there wasn't even half a similar look. Although everyone was talking, there was no substantive content at all. Chu Yang couldn't help but sigh. At this moment, he already knew clearly who these 7 people were. He also completely understood the real reason why they didn't ask about the outside world at all. Not only did he not feel the least bit impatient about this, but his heart was filled with bitterness instead. If it were him, he wouldn't dare to ask either. Previous Tribulation Sword Masters. 8 generations of Tribulation Sword Masters, including Chu Yang, gathered together for the first time in history. This meal on the surface looked, undoubtedly, it was full of smiles and laughter. Both the guests and the host were happy. However, that faint sense of oppression became more and more obvious and harder to hide. The 8 men who were laughing and chatting gradually fell silent. After the meal, more than 100 women clustered around Jianghu and the other 2 girls and walked into the inner hall. Then, a woman said something in a low voice. Tai Budian and the other 2 were stunned for a long time. There have never been any guests here. There are only new residents. If you aren't new residents, then you might be the first batch of guests after this space was created between heaven and earth. The women had already left. At this moment, the table of 8 men finally fell into complete silence. In the silence, The white-robed man waved his hand. Instantly, wine jars were piled up beside him, no less than 100 of them. He laughed and said, "Now that the women have all left, everyone is truly free. From now on, let's do whatever we want and get drunk. How about that?" But everyone responded loudly, as if deliberately breaking the unhappy and depressing atmosphere from before. All of them were extremely loud. In the next moment, all of them tapped on their own bodies one by one, sealing their own cultivation bases. Not getting drunk after 1,000 cups is actually a kind of pain. The leader laughed loudly. "Only by sealing your cultivation can you do it. Let's see who gets drunk first." Everyone agreed in unison. "Don't you think we should get rid of this new little brother first?" The 7 of them shouted together. Chu Yang didn't show any weakness and immediately sealed his cultivation. He said loudly, "Who's afraid of who? Let's see if I get drunk first or all of you become drunk cats. Let's say this first, no one is allowed to admit defeat. I'd rather drink myself to death than be a coward." "Nonsense. That's what I mean. Little Ruthless, you've got guts. Come. Little Ruthless, let's drink a jar first." One of them directly raised a wine jar. Chu Yang shouted and raised the wine jar. With a bang in the air, he raised his head and poured it down. Gulp, gulp. A moment later, smash. 2 empty wine jars were placed on the ground at the same time. The 2 wiped their mouths at the same time and said loudly, "Satisfying." The other person then raised the wine jar. "Good man, let's drink a jar." Chu Yang didn't say anything. He slapped open a mud seal and the 2 jars touched. Then he poured it down again. In the blink of an eye, Chu Yang had already drunk 4 jars in a row. He didn't hesitate at all. This made the other 7 people think, "This guy isn't here to cheat us of our wine, right? Come, let's start too. There's only this much wine. If you're fast, you'll get it. If you're slow, you won't get it." This round of drinking caused the sky to darken, and the sun and moon to lose their light. And these old men all had the same wish in their hearts, to get drunk. Deliberately, to get drunk to the extreme. Some things couldn't be said, asked, or said if they weren't drunk. Although they knew that they were deceiving themselves, this was already the best solution. Everyone poured the wine down their throats. As if they were competing, they poured one jar after another into their mouths, drinking as much as they could to get drunk earlier. The number of wine jars beside them increased one by one. Those that were neatly stacked and unopened also gradually decreased one by one. As the drunkenness got stronger, everyone finally started to talk more. Some topics that they didn't want to talk about before also seemed to be controlled and revealed uncontrollably. Back then, I tested the world with my sword and rode my horse in Jianghu, satisfying. Finally, the big brother took advantage of his drunkenness and suddenly roared to the sky. He laughed loudly. Back then, when the storm came, brothers came. Overturning the world, conquering the sea. Proud of the world, controlling the rise and fall of the world. Heaven, in the chest. Looking at the big brother who seemed to have gone crazy and hearing these words, although everyone was drunk, they suddenly fell silent. Then, they all cheered in unison. Chu Yang immediately confirmed the identity of this person, the 2nd-generation sword master of Calamity Sword, Storm, the legendary figure who overturned the Heaven continent back then. Today is the birthday of the confused sister in the group. Happy birthday, little sister. Fulfilling the promise to welcome the return of the brothers and sisters who took the college entrance examination. Congratulations to all of you for passing another round. Chapter 2502. That second brother, Cheng Zue, said, "Big brother is indeed heroic. But how much worse was I than you back then? Who knows if it's even better?" He knocked on the edge of the bowl with his chopsticks and recited slowly, 10,000 years in a dream, white hair, many emotions, many sorrows, brothers roam the heavens, I'm crazy underground. His voice was heroic and sorrowful, but it seemed to evoke everyone's sad past, making everyone's eyes turn red. Immediately, everyone was enraged. What the hell are you talking about? Making everyone so sad, we'll drink as punishment. Drink as punishment. Second brother didn't explain. He laughed loudly, picked up the wine jar and gulped it down. After a few more jars of wine, everyone was drunk. They were a little swayed. At first, it was the white-robed man who sat next to Chu Yang. Suddenly, he put his hand on Chu Yang's shoulder and said drunkenly, "Little brother, where did you come from? Are you here as a guest? Or, are you here to settle down?" Everyone was still noisy, but it could be seen that everyone's ears were perked up. The person who came first had asked this question many times, but no one knew if it was the former or the latter this time. The former represented hope, but the latter represented disappointment again. Chu Yang was tongue-tied. He waved his hand and laughed. "I'm definitely not here to settle down. How can I settle down here? My brothers are still outside." Chu Yang waved his hand proudly and said loudly, "I have brothers. They're all waiting for me. Brothers. They're all waiting for me." When he said this, there was a sudden silence. When Chu Yang said this, everyone was shocked. Everyone even forgot to pretend to be drunk, and just looked at him in a daze. The white-robed man's usually calm voice was a little dry. He forced a smile and said, You have so many brothers?" Chu Yang said, "Of course. A good brother." The 7 people fell into silence again. Chu Yang didn't speak again, and the whole hall was silent again. After a long time, Big Brother Storm raised his head and stared at Chu Yang with an extremely sharp gaze. He said, "All right, I'll be frank with you. Let's stop pretending. It's really boring. Every 10,000 years, there's always this once. He had been through this too many times. I'm really tired of it." Everyone raised their heads and fixed their eyes on Chu Yang, the new visitor. Their eyes were clear, and they didn't look drunk at all. The man in white sat quietly for a while and said, "Since we don't need to disguise ourselves anymore, let's go to the tea room. Silence. Let's have a good talk." That was because this number was a sensitive word for the people sitting there. Chu Yang made use of his drunkenness to say these words. The veils that had been forcefully placed on everyone's faces were pulled down in an instant. Chi Luo. There was nowhere to hide. Tea room. It was exceptionally quiet. In this place, not a sound could be heard, not a single sound could be heard. The fragrance of the tea was pleasant. After a moment of silence, the boss spoke first. "My name is Storm. I'm the 2nd-generation sword master of the heavenly realm. I'm the first person to settle down here." Chu Yang had already guessed it. He wasn't surprised at all, but he still couldn't help but size him up again. The second brother laughed and said with some melancholy, "I'm Meng Tsang, the 3rd-generation sword master of the heavenly realm." The third brother smiled, "I'm Duan Tian, the 4th generation." Next was the man in white who was fishing. His face twitched, and he said with some dryness, "I'm Yun Dong, the 5th-generation sword master." The 5th brother said, "I'm Qin Fong, the 6th-generation sword master." "I'm Lin Zun, the 7th generation." "I'm Jun Lai, the 8th generation, the last person to settle down here. I'm the only one here who hasn't received any newcomers." After the self-introduction, everyone's eyes focused on Chu Yang again. His eyes were burning, and they were faintly filled with hope. It could be seen that the words Heavenly Realm Sword Master were a topic that these people rarely talked about since they came here. Everyone's face was a little unnatural. Their muscles were twitching faintly, as if they were enduring some kind of great pain. But their eyes were especially eager. Chu Yang was silent for a moment, and then he said softly, "I'm Chu Yang. I'm the 1st-generation sword master of the heavenly realm." A sword chime sounded. The heavenly realm sword appeared in the air. Its unparalleled sharpness flickered in the air, and it stood there quietly. Everyone's gazes were focused on the sword. Their gazes were filled with a myriad of changes, and they were extremely complicated. This sword was Chu Yang's sword, but it was also the sword of everyone here. It was a long-awaited reunion, a reunion after so many years. The moment this sword suddenly appeared, everyone felt that the time that had passed became clear and alive in their minds again. Chu Yang reached out and grabbed the hilt of the Heavenly Realm sword, and put it back on the table in front of him. The Heavenly Realm sword was still shining with cold light. Faintly, there was a green sword energy flowing back and forth on the sword, as if it was alive. I'm also the last generation sword master of the heavenly realm. Chu Yang seemed to be considering his words. After a moment, he looked at the heavenly realm sword and said softly, "After me, perhaps, there won't be another sword master of the heavenly realm." A trace of pain flashed across Feng Fangjing's face. He said, "In other words, you've already completed the mission of the heavenly realm sword?" Chu Yang sighed softly. "Not yet." "Not yet, but I'm completing it. I believe it won't take long." Meng Tsang's fair face was abnormally red. He said, "Where are your brothers?" As soon as this question was asked, the 7 people became highly alert. "You're the sword master of the heavenly realm. Where are your brothers? Where are your tribulation brothers?" Chu Yang took a breath and said seriously, "They're already in the heavenly realm imperial court." Everyone looked at him speechlessly. This answer. It was both expected and unexpected. The brothers of the previous sword masters were all in the heavenly realm imperial court, and they were here. Now, the newest sword master of the heavenly realm imperial court was also here, and his brothers had gone to the heavenly realm imperial court. Was history repeating itself? Or was it the reincarnation of history? Nothing had changed. The only change was that this little brother had too few family members. Unexpectedly, Chu Yang continued, "The difference between us and you is that my brothers and I ascended together from the heavenly realm continent. We ascended to the heavenly realm imperial court. We were scattered in various places of the heavenly realm imperial court. Then we worked hard on our own. Recently, we reunited once again. It's very different from you guys back then. We didn't sacrifice our lives to pave the way, didn't set traps with good intentions, and didn't have indestructible golden bodies. We also didn't have the heart-wrenching pain of tens of thousands of years. We only had one heart and it would never change." "You mean, you guys ascended together from the heavenly realm continent?" The 7 people opened their eyes wide and muttered to themselves. Their voices were filled with disbelief and extreme envy. The sword master had personally led his brothers to ascend together. It could be said to be something they had dreamed of, but it was just an extravagant hope. Yun Dong's handsome face flushed with excitement. He gritted his teeth and wanted to speak, but he closed his mouth with difficulty. His cheeks bulged as he gritted his teeth. The others also gritted their teeth. Panting, they looked at Chu Yang. Everyone had a belly full of things to say and questions to ask. But when the words were about to come out of his mouth, there were thousands of words and thousands of questions, but no matter what, he couldn't say or ask. Finally, Storm slammed the table. His voice was hoarse, as if his vocal cords had suddenly broken. He asked, "You know about sacrificing your lives to pave the way and indestructible golden bodies? Then, have you ever seen my brothers?" As he spoke, his breathing became more and more rapid. His voice trembled violently, as if it would break at any time. But he forced himself to speak without stopping. "Have you ever seen Ji Hui Tian, Yang Yuchen, Qiu Shanyue, Zhuqiu Yangqiu?" Storm's lips trembled a little, and his voice carried extreme longing. "These people are my brothers." Chu Yang only felt a sense of shame rising from his heart. He took a breath and nodded solemnly. "Of course I've seen them. Not only have we seen them, but we've also fought side by side. They're all very well now. Every one of them is very well." Storm's whole body suddenly shook, and tears suddenly streamed down his face. He got the answer that he had been dreaming of, but as if he had lost all his strength, he slumped on the chair and said in a trembling voice, "Thank God. My brothers are indeed fine. God has mercy on them." He suddenly said in a trembling voice that seemed to be crying and laughing at the same time, "As long as you're all fine, even if I stay here for 80,000 years, 800,000 years, it's also worth it." Then Meng Tsang asked nervously, "Then, what about my brothers? Have you seen them? You should have, right?" At this moment, Meng Tsang's tone was mixed with a strong and urgent feeling. He hoped to get a positive answer from Chu Yang, but he was also afraid of getting a negative answer. His mentality was extremely contradictory. Chu Yang smiled and nodded. I've seen all the tribulation brothers of each generation. I didn't miss any one of them. I just mentioned that we've fought side by side and formed a composite formation together. In fact, they've all been together for each generation of tribulation. They're now fighting against the heavenly demons in the extraterritorial battlefield of Purple Cloud Heaven. They're the heroes of the entire Heaven Imperial Court. Chu Yang really couldn't bear to wait for them to ask one by one, so he simply answered them all directly. They've seen all of them. Nothing was left out. They've fought side by side. Jun Lai took a long breath, trying to control the calmness in his voice. He finally managed to control his voice, but tears flowed down. So, they're all still alive? And they're all living well? Chu Yang pondered for a moment this time and didn't answer immediately. His eyes turned slowly, and whoever his eyes fell on, their breathing would immediately stop nervously. Chapter 2503. Everyone was worried that Chu Yang's gaze would stop on their faces, so they subconsciously avoided it. They were afraid that Chu Yang would say that one of their brothers was dead. The shock of losing something and then regaining it was hard for anyone to bear. Even the legendary Tribulation Sword Master was no exception. Chu Yang's gaze finally stopped on Qin Fang's face. Qin Fang, the Tribulation Sword Master who once dominated the heavenly layer and dominated the rise and fall of the people, was actually a little scared now. He looked at Chu Yang's eyes in panic, then looked at the others helplessly and turned back. Because the others didn't dare to look at him, as if they were afraid of being implicated by him. A room full of Tribulation Sword Masters, their courage was definitely not much bigger than a mouse at this moment. Because he cared too much. Seeing that Chu Yang's gaze stopped on his face, Qin Fang's face suddenly turned pale. He felt cold all over and trembled. He stood up, his lips trembling, and he couldn't say anything. In trouble? Qin Fang stared straight at Chu Yang. His eyes were dull but ferocious. Chu Yang sighed sadly and said in a low voice, "Among the generations of Tribulation Sword Masters, only one person died, in your generation, the think tank." Diwu Cho Cheng. Qin Fang exclaimed, obviously with a strong heartache. Then he sat down absent-mindedly and murmured, "How could it be him? How could it be him?" Qin Fang couldn't accept that any of his brothers died. But he really didn't expect that the only one who died was the most stable one. The most resourceful one, the one who shouldn't have died. Yes, it's Diwu Cho Cheng. Chu Yang sighed deeply. He always thought that this matter was very cruel, but he had to mention it again and again. Seeing the grief of Diwu Cho Cheng's brothers, Chu Yang couldn't help but feel heartache as well. Enemy? Dharma Supreme? Diwu Cho Cheng? Think tank? No matter what kind of identity it was, it made people feel sad. My brother, Diwu Cho Cheng, is no longer in this world? Qin Fang sat for a while in a daze. Suddenly he raised his head and shot out a crazy sword light from his eyes. He stared intently at Chu Yang and asked while clenching his teeth, "How did he die? Who killed him?" It was an extremely dense aura of hatred. Almost instantly, everyone shuddered. Chu Yang closed his eyes and said, "He died in the Heavens continent. Double Sky continent." The seven of them murmured the same words. Finally, they exclaimed at the same time, "The Chong Tian continent? How could it be the Chong Tian continent?" He wanted to take revenge. Everything started from that well-intentioned scam. Chu Yang laughed bitterly. Finally, he recounted everything that had happened to the Dharma Supreme back then. Revenge? Ah. Qin Fang's eyes turned red at once. After all, I'm the one who killed my brothers. I feel sorry for them. Everyone was so sad that they couldn't say anything. Because they had also experienced what Qin Fang had experienced, but they were luckier than Qin Fang. There was no one like Diwu Cho Cheng. Diwu Cho Cheng hated Qin Fang so much. Wasn't it clear? Did it mean that his brothers also hated him so much? Was his choice back then right or wrong? Although they were mentally prepared, although they knew that this was inevitable, when they heard this news, everyone's heart still ached as if it was being cut by a knife. Storm laughed bitterly. I thought, 80,000 years. 80,000 years is enough for me to forget all the past. But when I suddenly mention it today, it's still like it was yesterday. It's still heart-wrenching. Fills this heart of mine. Chu Yang looked at the heartbroken Qin Fong and suddenly said, actually, before Diwu Chouchang died, he already knew the truth. He didn't hate you. Qin Fong raised his head suddenly. His eyes flashed for a moment, and then dimmed. He said bitterly, if I could, I'd rather he always hate me than let him die. Chu Yang said, that day, after Diwu Chouchang knew the truth, he wrote a poem to apologize to you. Qin Fong lowered his head. You read it, I'll listen. Chu Yang sighed and said in a low voice, at that time, he said, back then, after the vicissitudes of life, the brotherhood was boundless. In the dream, we drank happily, but woke up in the cold. How can I describe the melancholy of a lifetime? My hands were stained with the blood of heroes, and every step I took was a test of chivalry. I gnashed my teeth and hated the mistakes of heaven, and my nightmare caused my brother to be wronged. My sins couldn't be redeemed by heaven, and my hands were bloody. I let my brothers down, and I couldn't face my brothers or heaven. My heart was full of regret and bitterness, but I couldn't retreat or move forward. As Qin Fong was listening, he suddenly howled miserably, Brother, why are you so stupid? Don't you believe us? No matter what you've become, no matter how you've treated us, we won't really blame you. Why are you so stupid? You can't retreat or move forward. Who said that? You can retreat. Why don't you retreat? You can move forward. Why don't you? You and I are brothers. What's so difficult to face? Your sins, your brothers will work together to redeem you. Your hands were bloody, and we'll try our best to wash them off for you. As long as you're alive, there's hope for everything. Why are you so stubborn? Dead, there'll be nothing left when you're dead. His voice was hoarse, as if he was heartbroken at this moment. In the end, Diwu Chouchang took the initiative to die under the sword of calamity. After Chu Yang explained everything, he sighed deeply. In the end, he didn't finish one sentence. What sentence? Qin Fong clenched his fists, but his eyes were empty, and he seemed to ask unconsciously. Life and death are nothing, and my brothers also care about love. I hate that I can't turn back. Chu Yang said. When he said this, he stopped breathing. I added a sentence. Chu Yang said. What I added was, endless Chouchang waiting for the next life. Qin Fong smiled bitterly, shook his head and said dryly, you don't understand my brother. Chouchang didn't want this sentence. He smiled bitterly and said, Chouchang won't look forward to the next life. Life and death are nothing, and my brothers also care about love. I hate that I can't turn back, Qin Fong said quietly. Let's gather together in this life. Hearing this, Chu Yang's heart shook. After Qin Fong said, let's gather together in this life, he started to sit in a daze. After sitting for a while, tears suddenly flowed down his cheeks. He leaned back, and his head hung down deeply. One could faintly hear him exhaling deeply. His heart was filled with endless depression and grief. The tea room was so quiet that even the sound of a needle dropping could be heard. At this moment, there was a slight ticking sound on the ground, but it wasn't the sound of a needle dropping. It was Qin Fong's tears quietly dripping onto the ground. His tears were audible. His brother was dead, but he couldn't even take revenge. He was still trapped here and couldn't get out. The other sword masters all felt the same way. The only fortunate thing was that their brothers were all safe and sound. If something had happened to them, they might not be much better than Qin Fong, and might even be worse. Chu Yang was silent for a while and said, when I went to Purple Cloud Heavens, I saw Ji Huitian, Cheng Qifei, Wu Jueqing, Jun Weiling, Lu Long, and the others. Other than the first Tribulation Sword Master and his brothers, I've seen all the other Tribulation Sword Masters. Where's the first Tribulation Sword Master? Even if the Sword Master isn't here, the other Tribulation Sword Masters should be here, right? Why did they all disappear? Storm asked. The others also felt a little strange and looked at Chu Yang at the same time. Because, since they came here, the first one they saw was the second Tribulation Sword Master. They had never seen the first Tribulation Sword Master. This was already the biggest doubt in everyone's heart. The first Tribulation Sword Master, you've seen him before. Chu Yang laughed. At the Lake of Despair, do you remember that you went through a soul test? So it's him? The 7 of them exclaimed together, and then their faces were full of anger. That bastard is the first Tribulation Sword Master? Looking at their expressions, Chu Yang knew that they had suffered a lot in the hands of the first Tribulation Sword Master. Thinking of the torture he had gone through, Chu Yang also wanted to curse. The first Tribulation Sword Master was different from you. You all chose to sacrifice yourselves to send your brothers up. But the first Tribulation Sword Master chose to really kill his brothers, and then wanted to go up himself. Chu Yang laughed disdainfully, so he was punished by the person who created the Tribulation Sword, and was suppressed at the bottom of the Lake of Despair. Now, his soul has already scattered. He really killed his brothers to fulfill his own wish. Storm widened his eyes in disbelief. He suddenly roared, "That heartless son of AB***." He raised his hand and was about to slap the table heavily. Yun Dong was quick to react, and caught his hand in midair, smiling bitterly. If he really let this furious slap down, he could forget about keeping this tea house. The others also felt that it was inconceivable. In this world, there was actually such a Tribulation Sword Master? Sacrificing all his brothers to fulfill his own wish? How could he bear to do that? Died in my hands, Chu Yang said. It's just that, it's a pity for that generation of Tribulation brothers. To die in the hands of such a person. Good job. Storm stared and said, what's the point of keeping such scum alive if not killing them? This bastard is also a Tribulation Sword Master, but he put us through such a cruel test. It turns out that he has already lost his mind. Everyone nodded. No one asked how he killed them. Chu Yang also heaved a sigh of relief. If these guys knew that he had swallowed that guy alive, cough cough. Chapter 2504. Lin Zun was obviously burning with anxiety. He couldn't wait for Chu Yang to continue. Everyone's breathing became heavy again, but no one spoke. They waited quietly for Chu Yang to continue. The other brothers? Well, the misunderstanding back then has been resolved now. Chu Yang raised his head and looked at the 7 Tribulation Sword Masters. He said in a deep voice, now, the brothers don't hate you anymore. And they are very regretful and heartbroken. Their biggest wish now is to see you again and say sorry to you. Storm and the others were shocked, their eyes widening. You mean, they already know the truth of what happened back then? Chu Yang nodded. How did they know? The 7 people asked together, including Qin Fong, who was in extreme pain. After asking, he opened his mouth again. Did you tell them? Chu Yang nodded and admitted. Who asked you to tell them? The 7 roared together. Their faces were ferocious, as if they wanted to swallow Chu Yang alive. Chu Yang was flabbergasted and speechless in the face of this unexpected situation. He didn't know what to say or what to do. What's going on? I cleared up the misunderstanding for you. Even if you don't thank me collectively, why are you blaming me in unison? Is there any justice in this? Is there any reason? Is there any reason? What the fuck is this? Brother Chu, we are shouting at you like this. It's indeed unreasonable, but you don't know. If you tell the truth like this, they won't be able to take it. Storm frowned and said in distress, I know the temper of my brothers. If they know that they wronged me and misunderstood me for such a long time, I don't know how sad they will be and what they will do. My brothers are the same. Meng Tsong stood up and paced back and forth in a panic. Isn't that so? Yun Dong was a little upset. He spun a teacup in his hand. He said, those bastards, don't do anything stupid. Chu Yang continued to be dumbfounded. Finally, he wasn't speechless anymore. He pointed to his nose and said, brothers, we are all Tribulation Sword Masters, okay? Do you think I haven't thought of the things that you guys have thought of? How could I not have considered the stakes? Since I said it, I must have taken precautions in advance and made arrangements to deal with the aftermath. Do I look unreliable? Everyone turned to look at him. After a long time, They laughed awkwardly. That's true, Chu Yang said fiercely. What? What do you mean by that? That's the truth. I've spent so much effort on behalf of you people of the previous generation. If I spent so much effort, would there be no merit or hard work? At the very least, it was hard work, right? He didn't expect that he wouldn't get a single good word out of it today. Moreover, he had to be reprimanded by all of you in such a manner. The heavens are blind. Yu Feishuang. Her grumbling had diluted the sentimental atmosphere that had just been stirred up. Upon seeing Chu Yang's behavior, although they knew that Chu Yang was putting on an act, many tribulation sword masters still felt embarrassed. The fourth brother, Yun Dong, who had spent the most time with Chu Yang, said awkwardly, "Little brother Chu, we were too anxious just now. I absolutely do not mean to disrespect you or look down on you. You are a magnanimous person. A grand minister's heart can take a boat, while a sword master's heart can run a horse. You definitely won't mind, right?" Chu Yang was so angry that he laughed. "You're a magnanimous person. A sword master's stomach can run horses. Are you praising me or praising yourself? Or are you praising everyone here? We're all tribulation sword masters, okay?" The eldest brother, Storm, said, That's right. You don't even know how to say something nice. You're dragging down the prestige of tribulation sword masters. The little brother Chu, what happened next? Chu Yang felt a stomachache. He held back his laughter and said, "Oh, our eldest brother knows about our second brother. We're all people who value brotherhood the most. I know you're anxious. Let me tell you in detail." Everyone praised in unison. "Little brother Chu is indeed a good brother. You're magnanimous and elegant." To be praised by all the tribulation sword masters except himself, Chu Yang felt a little smug. But, of course, then, the group sat in a circle and listened attentively to Chu Yang's narration. Under everyone's strong request, Chu Yang first narrated the battle that happened in Purple Cloud Heavens. Under the unanimous request of the 7 tribulation sword masters, Chu Yang focused on describing everyone's current appearance, moves, and cultivation. In any case, he described everything in detail. Naturally, this made Chu Yang fall into an extremely difficult memory. Even if Chu Yang's memory was outstanding and amazing, it was already not easy for him to remember all the characteristics of these people. But it was absolutely impossible for him to describe all of them clearly. But these guys didn't consider the reality of the situation. They didn't give up and kept asking questions. When Chu Yang couldn't say anything, they even kept reminding him. After a few twists and turns, Chu Yang finally finished his narration. He thought that he had done his best, but everyone was still unsatisfied and looked as if he didn't try his best. Then, everyone further requested Chu Yang to recount the story from the heavenly realm all the way to the heavenly imperial court. Chu Yang had finished no less than 4 or 5 pots of water by himself. Then, just when Chu Yang thought that he had finally come to an end and that this painful storytelling career had ended, he was asked again, "Recount the battle of the Purple Cloud Heavens brothers one more time." Chu Yang broke down instantly. "Do you want to kill me? Are you done yet?" He resolutely rejected this unreasonable request. Finally, the tribulation sword masters were reasonable people. They all knew that their request was indeed a little too much. Besides, Chu Yang's mouth was really dry at this stage. His vitality was greatly depleted, and his essence, qi and spirit were seriously exhausted. It was even more exhausting than a big battle. So, he had to let it go for the time being. Just when Chu Yang heaved a sigh of relief and was about to turn around and ask everyone to tell him about their experiences, he realized that the sky was bright. It seemed that this round of storytelling actually lasted for a whole night. But everyone was full of energy, except for Chu Yang. Well, it seemed that it wasn't just Chu Yang. Qin Fang's spirit was also very low. Except for when he asked about the other brothers, he could still laugh happily. Most of the time, he was in a depressed state of grief and silence. There was no other reason except for his brother, Diwu Chochong. Everyone was in high spirits and reminiscing about the past. So, they just continued talking like this. Even Chu Yang didn't show any signs of fatigue. After this guy secretly drank the spring of life for a while, His essence, chi and spirit instantly recovered. Naturally, he was full of energy. This discussion lasted for a full 7 days and 7 nights. None of these 8 people ever walked out of the tea room. The other sword masters' wives were all very surprised. This kind of situation had never happened in tens of thousands of years. What was going on this time? Although there would be a tribulation sword master entering this special place every 10,000 years or so, there would be a similar gathering every time to welcome the new tribulation sword master. There would also be a gathering of sword masters to talk, but at most one night was enough. It had never lasted for such a long time. It was just that when everyone learned from Mo Qingwu and the other 2 women that Chu Yang was the first and last tribulation sword master, they were collectively silent. Everyone could finally guess what had happened in the past few days. This newcomer had actually surpassed her husband and accomplished something that they had failed to accomplish even after putting in all their efforts. He forcefully changed the destiny of tribulation. Everyone was silent. They silently organized all the meals and side dishes, sent them to the tea room on time, and then quietly left. Everyone knew how difficult and precious it was for them to get together this time. It also seemed to have a very rare commemorative value and epic-making significance, because this was the first gathering of all the tribulation sword masters. Of course, except for the first generation, I'm not interested to know how you came here for the time being. What I'm most concerned about is how to get out. Chu Yang asked. Get out? When the topic returned to these 2 words, everyone returned to silence. And this strange silence lasted for a long time. No one spoke. After a long time, Storm coughed and said in a low voice, "When I first came in, I thought about getting out every day. I tried to think of a way to get out, but I couldn't do it. Slowly I got used to it. Then, the brothers came one after another. Almost every time we welcomed a new person, we would pool our efforts to think of a way to get out, but it was to no avail. Getting out might be an extravagant hope. But then, after sending the brothers away, I really felt like a walking corpse for a long time. That kind of discomfort was really indescribable." Meng Tsong smiled sadly. Although I knew that they wouldn't die, and that they were actually going to create miracles, become legends, create a new life, and have a brilliant future, but there was always some trepidation in my heart. I was afraid that the decision was wrong and would really cause the death of my brothers. Then, Meng Tsong smiled sadly. Even if you have confirmed that they are still alive. Back then, when the bodies of my brothers were destroyed by my own hands and their limbs were incomplete, the pain in my heart can't be described with words. At that moment, it was equivalent to personally turning all my brothers into ashes and scattering their souls. But until now, I've forgotten what cultivation level they have. But, compared to when they were in the level Heavens continent, I don't know how many times they have improved. Lin Zun smiled faintly. Brothers are slaughtering heavenly demons. Their cultivation has undoubtedly increased a lot. Although we don't know what level they have reached, we can't be sure. But I'm confident that I won't fall too far behind. Chu Yang nodded. He thought to himself, perhaps it's this mentality that allows these people to cultivate with all their might in such a peaceful situation, and even increase their cultivation at a rapid pace, and I don't know why. Sometimes, when I'm not practicing martial arts, I feel like I can't control myself. I'll also feel my cultivation increase. I'll even automatically break through the bottleneck. Jun Lai frowned. Obviously, he couldn't understand this situation no matter how much he thought about it. Now that he said that, the others also echoed, that's right. There's indeed such a situation, and it's happened more than once. Chu Yang's heart skipped a beat. He said, everyone's situation, could it be related to your brothers? I thought so too. That's the only reasonable explanation. Storm said, otherwise, there wouldn't be a condition of golden body attainment to come out of seclusion. I'm guessing that every time our brothers kill heavenly demons in the extraterritorial battlefield, or how much contribution they make, it will lead our cultivation to increase at the same time? Other than that, it's really hard to find a more reasonable explanation. The 7 of them fell silent at the same time. Then, they nodded one after another, expressing their agreement. Actually, brothers share the same fate. Chu Yang said cheerfully, even if we're not together physically, when have our hearts ever been apart? At least, everyone's friendship will never change. You've already linked your fates together. In the future, even if you don't want to go out, I'm afraid it's impossible. The 7 of them all smiled bitterly. Don't you really want to go out and fight with your brothers again, roam the extraterritorial battlefield, and bring glory to the purple heavenly imperial palace? Chu Yang asked solemnly, have you really forgotten that kind of life and death moment, the days when blood and fire intersected? Have you really forgotten? The eyes of the 7 Tribulations sword masters lit up at the same time. How could they forget? Who could forget? Who could forget the martial world when they were young and old? Yun Dong picked up a cup of tea and gently shook it. The tea color rippled as it flew up. He softly recited, thinking back to those days, when we were happy, we sang and roared together. When the wind blew, we rode in the martial world together. When we faced strong enemies, we went through fire and water together. When we were in danger, we went through a sea of fire and a mountain of knives together. Brother, if you're in trouble, I'll go. If you're in trouble, I won't return. With my brothers by my side, I'm invincible. As he recited, his voice suddenly became intense and sonorous, like the clashing of gold and iron. The others listened quietly. Every one of them was radiating brilliance. Those glorious years, those bloody martial world, those brothers and comrades in arms, those everything they once had. They were all so fresh. It was like yesterday. If one day, I can once again join hands with my brothers, roam the martial world, gallop across the martial world, and lie drunk on the battlefield. Storm said softly, even if I die, I'll have no regrets. The others nodded their heads heavily. In the next few days, Chu Yang, Mo Qingwu and the other 2 stayed here. It wasn't that Chu Yang didn't want to leave. Because, in fact, he wasn't very comfortable here. It wasn't that these people weren't good. On the contrary, these 7 people were all good men who valued friendship and loyalty. They definitely deserved the title of Tribulation Sword Master. Chu Yang felt that it was definitely an honor to be able to be on par with them. But the real problem was, after staying with Yun Dong for 10 days, they were then taken away by Storm. Since the first night they went to Storm's place, they had been talking night after night. They were still the same people who had gathered before, not a single one was missing. Because of this, Tempest turned hostile and wanted to chase the other sword masters out. However, each and every one of them shamelessly stayed behind without fighting back. They accompanied Tempest to eat, drink, and chat with Tempest. They were the standard 3 escorts. Storm introduced the life of his brothers, how they met each other, and each person's temperament in detail. It had obviously been 80,000 years, but Storm spoke in an orderly manner. His thoughts were unusually clear, and there was no doubt about it. Obviously, his brothers were still alive in his memory, and their images were always very vivid. From the time they met in the lower 3 heavens, to the upper 3 heavens, and then to the upper 3 heavens, what each of them did and said, how many things they experienced, how many battles they fought, and so on, which brother had once blocked a knife for me, which brother had once done something for me. Storm's face had a long-lost expression of enjoyment as he spoke tirelessly. When they were in Storm's house, the others just played the role of listeners. Only Storm and Chu Yang talked. Of course, it was mainly Storm who spoke, and Chu Yang who listened, occasionally interjecting a sentence or 2. As for the others, they all listened with great interest. They stayed at Storm's house for half a month. Then, they were dragged to Mengsong's house, and naturally, they ate and drank to their heart's content. Then they talked through the night. Storm and the others became listeners again. When they reached the 4th place, they returned to Yun Dong's house. Then, finally, when they reached Junlai's house, Chu Yang felt that he was going to faint, and could really faint to the ground at any time. I'm really scared now. What kind of people are these? They're the real legends, the Tribulation Sword Master. They're too good at talking. Chu Yang took a break in his room and sighed with a long face. Why don't we leave, really? Mo Qingwu and Tai Budian were startled when they heard this, and then the 3 women burst into laughter. It was the first time they saw Chu Yang so helpless. It's true. Although these people are true heroes, and I'm very touched by their friendship, but everything has to have a limit, right? If they continue to bombard me like this, even if I have a lot of feelings, I can't stand it. With a long face, Chu Yang threw himself on the bed, sprawled out, and sighed repeatedly. I've already given up, really. I'm in so much pain. Yes, Storm and the others had never talked about this kind of conversation in the tens of thousands of years they had been together. Because brothers were always a knot in their hearts that they couldn't untie. It was also a pain that couldn't be mentioned. But with Chu Yang's arrival, this situation was completely broken. At the beginning, there was a subtle feeling of being closer to home. When they suddenly faced the reality of the situation, they were really a little scared, a little fearful, and didn't dare to face it. But as that fear passed, the memories that had been suppressed for tens of thousands of years suddenly gushed out. It was the old house on fire. There was no saving it. Everyone wanted to get it out. And the best person to pour it out first, the only candidate, was of course this new tribulation sword master Chu Yang. Although they didn't say it out loud, all the sword masters were actually very jealous in their hearts. You're so cool. You actually did what we couldn't do. We weren't qualified, but you were. We all needed to use that kind of cruel and heart-wrenching method to send our brothers up, but you actually easily flew up with your brothers. We've all been living in prison for tens of thousands of years, but you've been living a carefree life outside. Why? I'll continue. There's probably one more chapter. Please vote. Chapter 2506. Everyone was thinking that since Chu Yang was the one who started the conversation, then he had to bear the corresponding responsibility. Besides, he was so outstanding. Humph, he was even more outstanding than us. We were all unhappy. Although we couldn't do anything, but we could vent a little. Now, you want to leave before we hear you foaming at the mouth and having nervous spasms? How could it be so easy? You want to leave? Sure. You can leave after you finish talking and listening to the story. No one will stop you then. As the saying goes, if the heavens want to punish you, you can do it, but if you bring it on yourself, you can't live. Therefore, in the following period of time, Chu Yang was directly subjected to torture. Torture in shifts. Who could bear to listen to this kind of story for a few months? The story of the Tribulation Brothers and Sword Masters was nothing more than the following. Lower three heavens, meeting, forming a brotherhood. Three heavens, working hard, becoming friends. Deepening in the upper three heavens, and then everyone creating the great cause of unifying the heavens. The story of every Tribulation Sword Master and his brothers was basically the same. The soup is different, but the medicine is the same. Whether it is the beginning, the process, the Gao Chao, the end, or the final game, there are no surprises. Chu Yang was continuously bombarded like this. Wave after wave of bombardment. The only advantage seemed to be that the spiritual energy here was unusually thick, which was greatly beneficial to Mo Qingwu, Tai Budian, and Wu Qianqian's cultivation. And the little golden person in Chu Yang's body was also slowly absorbing the spiritual energy and growing stronger. Otherwise, Chu Yang might have completely collapsed. Just as he was sighing, he heard someone calling from outside the door. It was Jun Lai's voice. Brother Chu Yang, let's go to the tea room. It's time. Everyone is waiting for us there. Chu Yang let out a sorrowful cry. He pulled the quilt over his head and sobbed. Bosses, please let me go. I'm about to collapse mentally. Please have mercy. Footsteps sounded. Jun Lai walked in. Oh, you haven't really collapsed. Come, it's rare for us to meet. Let's have a good chat. When you really collapse, we'll definitely have mercy. Chu Yang lifted the quilt and sat up. Then, he said in grief and indignation, of course you guys are interested. None of you have talked about this for tens of thousands of years. Now, you finally have the opportunity. Even if I let you guys talk for another year, you guys would still be in high spirits, but The more he spoke, the more aggrieved and indignant he felt. Chu Yang angrily said, but what about me? He fell straight back onto the bed, lying flat on his stomach as he hammered the bed with his hand. I've been walking like this all the way, and I'm still walking like this? Look at how cocky this guy is. He actually keeps walking like this. Someone outside clicked his tongue. He's obviously looking down on us for not walking like this. Come, I have to reason with you. We are both Calamity Sword Masters. Why are you so awesome? Do you have more than the others? Chu Yang looked up to the sky and heaved a long sigh. Oh heavens, oh earth, oh heavens, please open your eyes. However, no matter how unwilling Chu Yang was, he was still dragged out by the two masters of the Tribulation Sword. He walked out as if he was being escorted. Don't worry, my wife will accompany your wife. It's very safe. There's no way you'll be able to escape. Jun Lai was comforting him. Chu Yang wanted to cry but had no tears. This is comforting, this is obviously blackmailing. This is what I hate the most. If I didn't want to leave with them, and they weren't able to leave because of your wives, I would have escaped long ago. Mo Qingwu looked at the backs of the three people and heaved a long sigh. Did you guys notice? The temperament of these 7 guys is actually not much different from Chu Yang's. Each of them is a rare hero, each of them is an upright hero. But I don't know why each of them is more or less a little wretched. Tai Budian smiled bitterly and nodded. That's true, it doesn't seem right. But this shouldn't be right in front of us. Wu Qianqian felt the same way. Not only are they wretched, but it seems that each of them likes to gloat. Especially towards the people they approve of, they're especially so. They're especially enthusiastic when it comes to greeting them and tormenting them in different ways. The Tribulation Sword Masters are all freaks. Mo Qingwu concluded. Suddenly, she shuddered all over and was terrified. Oh, fortunately, they didn't know that I'm actually one of the tribulations. Otherwise, there would be one more person beside Chu Yang to be tortured. It's scary just thinking about it. Huh. Tai Budian and Wu Qianqian looked over at the same time. Mo Qingwu was stunned. The next moment, she immediately raised her hands. I was wrong, you were wrong? The two women walked over with evil smiles and sized her up. What were you wrong about? Mo Qingwu turned and tried to escape, but Tai Budian and Wu Qianqian jointly restrained her and pinned her down on the bed. They said sarcastically, Yo, I really couldn't tell that our sister Qingwu is one of the tribulations. What? Does that mean that neither of us is? Come, let's teach this girl a lesson. Let's see what one of the tribulations is capable of. As they spoke, they fully activated the divine tickling technique. Mo Qingwu laughed and screamed at once. She curled up and couldn't escape. She repeatedly begged for mercy. Ha! Spare me! Ha! The three women were in a mess at once. Finally, after one round, Chu Yang left in a hurry, almost as if he was running for his life. He walked all the way to the barrier, but he was still covered in cold sweat. Behind him, the 7 people stopped in their tracks. Chu Yang, have a safe journey. We won't be sending you off. The 7 of them said in unison. Chu Yang turned his head. The 7 people opposite him all looked at him with sincere smiles on their faces, as if they were looking at their own brothers. In this short meeting, they had already acknowledged Chu Yang long ago. During this period of long conversations, everyone liked this little brother very much. At this moment, they were actually a little reluctant to part. All of you have to take care too. Chu Yang took a breath. When we slaughter the extraterrestrial demons, we will meet again in the extraterrestrial battlefield. When the time comes, we will roam freely and lie drunk on the battlefield. That's right. When the time comes. When we are together with our brothers, the extraterrestrial demons will be wine. Relive the purple clouds. When we reach the imperial court and see my brothers, don't forget to tell them. Yes, the things that I made myself, give them to my brothers. Tell them that we will look for them very soon. The 7 of them cupped their fists at the same time and bid farewell. Chu Yang turned and left with Mo Qingwu and the other 2. When they passed through the barrier that the previous Tribulation Sword Masters had never been able to pass through. The barrier rippled like water, and then the 4 of them disappeared from everyone's sight. Watching them leave, Storm let out a long sigh. Sigh, the same origin but different fates. This Tribulation Sword Master is really strong. Meng Tsong felt the same. There's a feeling of mountains and oceans on him. Yun Dong smiled bitterly. So, I wanted to spar with him. But I didn't. The others laughed together. Ha. So as not to embarrass yourself. Junlai said, he's still so young, but he already has such achievements. It's understandable that he can meet the requirements of Tribulation Sword. No wonder we can't do it, but only he can. Sigh, comparisons are odious. Comparisons are odious. Lin Zhu nodded. So, there's no need to be unconvinced. Strong is strong, there's no reason to talk about it. If he doesn't meet the requirements, he doesn't meet the requirements. There's no reason to talk about it. The only thing I'm worried about now is whether my cultivation can be compared to my brother's when I meet them in the future. I mustn't fall behind. He looked at the others and said lightly, as for competing with you, I'm not interested. There's nothing to compare. Compared to Chu Yang, I'm even less interested. There's no comparison at all. The others laughed and scolded at the same time. This bastard is so sarcastic. Is he afraid that we'll be jealous? Ha! The group turned around and left. However, everyone could feel that this time, their mood was greatly different from the past. In the past, they were calm and indifferent. But now, there was a faint sense of urgency. There was also a strong sense of anticipation and nervousness. When are we going out? Brothers, I miss you. Chu Yang and the others had just walked out of the barrier when they felt their bodies falling at a very fast speed. Then, they realized that their original position was actually in midair. They were suspended in midair without using their cultivation. It would be strange if they didn't fall. The ripples below them were actually the lake of despair. When did we come here? Chu Yang and the others were all confused. Weren't we still at the bottom of the lake just now? We only entered that door after entering the bottom of the lake. Then we arrived at that mysterious space. Why are we in the sky now? The four of them controlled their bodies and flew back to the side of the lake. Then, they looked at the clear lake water again. The three of them were very confused. There must be a reason for this. But they couldn't figure it out now. Where are we going next? Tai Budian asked. Let's find someone to ask how long we've been in there. Chu Yang said. The four of them quickly descended the mountain. After finding someone to ask, the four of them were stunned on the spot. This was because a whole year had passed since he entered the lake of despair. The year. When they calculated this number, the four of them were almost stunned. How long had they been in there? How could a year have passed so quickly? While they were in disbelief, they found a few more people to ask. They even found a few farmers and a few sects to ask around. The four of them finally confirmed that it was true. A year had passed. This is bad. Chu Yang's expression was very ugly. The four of them looked at each other and said in unison, this is indeed bad. Let's go quickly. Let's go back quickly. Without saying anything else, the four of them used their maximum speed and rushed toward the passage that Shui Leihan had opened up anxiously. It had been a whole year. How many changes had happened in this period of time? How many things had they missed? The four of them didn't even dare to think about it now. They only hoped that it wouldn't be too late and that there wouldn't be any regrets. Chapter 2507. In a year's time, nothing big could happen. Of course, many big things could happen too. For example, the current Heaven Imperial Palace. The current Heaven Imperial Palace could be said to be a complete mess. First was the Extreme Heaven. The newly risen Heavenly Emperor Wuxiang, Dong Wuxiang, had fought a few tough battles with Heavenly Emperor Wuqing. Both sides had wins and losses. Strictly speaking, Heavenly Emperor Wuxiang seemed to have the upper hand in the recent battles. This result made everyone's jaws drop. After Chu Yang left the Heaven Imperial Palace, Missouri Tianji also didn't show his face as promised. However, the Heavenly Secrets Intelligence Department under him took advantage of the situation and became the only intelligence network in the Heaven Imperial Palace. As for the other old intelligence networks, they were either dismantled, swallowed, subdued, or defeated by Mo Tianji. In any case, those who went against him died. Those who followed him were gone, of course, other than Brother Jie, No one knew that the Heavenly Secrets Intelligence Department that had risen to fame recently was actually a team set up by Mo. Many people even thought that the Heavenly Secrets Intelligence Department and the newly risen Heavenly Emperors had some unknown grudges. If not, why would the Heavenly Secrets Intelligence Department collect so much detailed information about the newly risen Heavenly Emperors and sell it out so recklessly? It was because of this illusion that it played a huge role in this period of time. Although Mo hadn't shown his face for a long time, but because of this, the situation of the entire world was still tightly controlled by him. Dong Wuxiang, the newly risen Heavenly Emperor Wuxiang, personally led his subordinates and fought bloody battles. He took the lead and defeated 37 of the Heavenly Emperor Wu Qing's troops. The more they fought, the stronger they became. Their momentum was unprecedentedly strong. Currently, it had evolved into a four-sided tsunami. The extreme heaven was now in a precarious and tense situation. The Heavenly Secrets Intelligence Department undoubtedly played a huge role in this. On the surface, the newly risen Heavenly Emperor's forces seemed to have a deep grudge with the Heavenly Secrets Intelligence Department. Naturally, they couldn't get any information from the Heavenly Secrets Intelligence Department. As for the Heavenly Emperor Wu Qing's side, as long as you could take out money, there would be information. The more money, the more detailed the information. However, if they didn't pay or didn't pay enough, they could still get information. They were just not responsible for the accuracy of the information. Under this premise, the army that Zue Wu Qing had sent out had, intentionally or unintentionally, fallen into the traps set by the Heavenly Armament Pavilion. It would be strange if they didn't win such a battle. The emotionless Heavenly Emperor's forces were actually helpless against this. Selling information was about mutual consent, and the price was clearly stated. If you did not pay enough money, it would be strange if they could give you comprehensive and complete information. Furthermore, the Heavenly Secret Intelligence Department was growing stronger by the day, and the Heavenly Emperor Merciless was unwilling to make another strong enemy. He could only suffer in silence. If he wanted to buy more information, he would have to pay as much as he wanted. The effect of True Price's information was extraordinary. For a moment, they were able to fight evenly with Heavenly Emperor Wuxiang's forces. The battle entered a stalemate. However, the price of intelligence from the Heavenly Secrets Intelligence Department was getting higher and higher, to the point where it was harder and harder to accept. As long as you did not buy it, you would definitely be at a disadvantage in the next battle. If you wanted to buy it, it was simply too expensive, and you really could not afford it. Such a vicious cycle caused the Heavenly Emperor Heartless side to complain incessantly. As for Heavenly Emperor Wuxiang's side, it seemed like they couldn't buy any information on the surface, but in reality, the information they obtained would always be a step ahead of Heavenly Emperor Wu Qing's side. And it was even more detailed. If the Heavenly Emperor Wu Qing's subordinates saw the information on Dong Wuxiang's side, they would definitely spit out a mouthful of blood and die from anger on the spot. Because this kind of information, almost all of them had hemorrhoids, not to mention the target of the operation plan, and such detailed information, they had never enjoyed such treatment before. Comparisons were odious. As for the top experts sent by Zue Wu Qing, they were no match for Dong Wuxiang and Mo Lei, the couple, and Li Xiongtu. Furthermore, GMO had also secretly snuck into the extreme heaven, bringing along his own group of people as a secret support. Appearing and disappearing unpredictably. Under the continuous attacks of both overt and covert schemes, Zue Wu Qing's true strength was not as strong as the other Heavenly Emperors. The extreme heaven was only nominally under his control, but in reality, it was controlled by the sage's people. And this time, the sage's people had no intention of participating in this battle at all. In addition, the sage did not show his face or say anything from the start to the end. Under the influence of various negative effects, Zue Wu Qing was in a complete tragedy. On that day, when Dong Wuxiang's army was pressing on the border, he even sent out a notice to the world. Zue Wu Qing, do you dare to fight with me? Since you don't want to fight against the extraterrestrial demons, since you don't want to work for the benefit of the world, why not abdicate your position? Even if I, Dong Wushang, do not care about the overall situation, I still know how to resist foreign aggression. Slaughter the extraterrestrial demons. How many years have I been heartless and unrighteous? If I become the heavenly emperor in the future, the army will go straight to the purple cloud heavens. The first few sentences were obviously written by someone else, and it was only Dong Wushang who read them out. Although Dong Wushang was also righteous and took it as his duty to slaughter the extraterrestrial demons, such sour words and such a refined poem were not something he could write even if he was beaten to death. At most, he could still make do with it. On the night of the full moon, on the peak of the imperial city, merciless and without injury, meet in life and death. The loser has no regrets, falling straight into the spring. The winner is king, dominating the heavens. When this challenge letter came out, the whole world was in an uproar. Right now, Dong Wushang already had the absolute advantage, and his army had arrived at the imperial city. And at this very moment, bringing up the king versus king battle, it was obvious that he did not want to cause unnecessary casualties. This was Heavenly Emperor Wushang's benevolence. And this kind of battle method was undoubtedly the best way to arouse men's hot-bloodedness. Especially a battle between kings, it would become a legend. No matter who won or lost. As long as this battle was carried out, it would be immortalized in the extreme heaven. For a moment, the whole extreme heaven was shouting, "Heavenly Emperor Wushang, you have guts. Come out and fight. Drunk Wushang, come out and fight if you are a man. The fair battle. The winner is king. The winner is king." The whole extreme heaven was like boiling water. However, although everyone was shouting like this, not many people really believed that Drunk Wushang would really stand out and fight to the death with Dong Wushang. Drunk Wushang's true strength was far from being unleashed. Due to his relationship with the Holy Monarch, Extreme Heaven was Drunk Wushang's true trusted aide. Basically, he had long been sent to a place and became a governor of a region. On one hand, Dong Wushang's rapid progress in attacking cities was due to the intelligence from Tianji Intelligence Department. He had caught the other party off guard. On the other hand, it was also because Heavenly Emperor Wushang's command was not effective, and it was hard for him to execute orders as he wished. Those under Drunk Wushang's command that could play a decisive role had only just received the news, and they were rushing over to save the king. Therefore, as long as Drunk Wushang's side could hold on for a month, the reinforcements would arrive, and they would be able to turn defeat into victory. They would even be able to catch a turtle in a jar and completely destroy Dong Wushang's forces. Heavenly Emperor Wushang made use of this opportunity to counterattack. Not only could he destroy Dong Wushang's forces, but he could also completely get rid of the people around him who did not belong to him and truly unify the extreme heaven. This was the best plan and everyone could see it. As for whether it would be the expected result, and what countermeasures Heavenly Emperor Wushang would have, no one had considered it yet. But at least in this aspect, Drunk Wushang was still able to sit back and relax. With such a powerful backup plan, Drunk Wushang had no reason to fight Dong Wushang. In fact, even Dong Wushang himself had long known that this challenge was just to build momentum and raise his reputation. He would never be so naive as to think that Drunk Wushang would really come out and fight him. That was something that was absolutely impossible. Even if it were a battle maniac like himself, if he were in Drunk Wushang's position, he would definitely not come out to fight so recklessly. But in this world, there were many things that happened without reason. Something that was absolutely impossible might not necessarily be absolute. On the second day after Dong Wushang's challenge letter was sent out, Heavenly Emperor Wushang, Drunk Wushang gave a personal response. "If you want to fight, I'll fight. On the night of the full moon, I won't leave until I see you. One sword and one saber, I won't rest until I'm dead. The winner is king, and the loser has no complaints." When such an unyielding and iron-blooded reply came out, everyone in the Empyrean Pole who knew about it was dumbfounded at the same time. He couldn't believe his ears or his eyes. No one expected Drunk Wushang to actually accept this challenge. And such a direct response. Would he really accept the challenge head-on? Could it be that this Heavenly Emperor Wushang was kicked in the head by a donkey? Did he lose his mind? Just as everyone was filled with doubts, they saw the 4 gates of the extreme heaven capital and merciless city open at the same time. What most people did not know was that the imperial city was also being cleaned up. All the guards came out. The palace maids and concubines all gathered in the 3 big palaces. The other places were completely empty and empty. It would not be an exaggeration to say that it was a flat land. The most central place, the Great Heaven Palace, was completely silent. Above, a few servants laid out a bright red carpet on the ground. The battlefield. Drunk Wuxiang had actually started to prepare the battlefield for the final battle. All these signs showed that drunk Wuxiang was preparing for this battle with all his might. This was a battle that did not have much of a chance of winning, and it was completely unnecessary. He actually agreed to the challenge. He actually accepted the challenge. He actually accepted the challenge in such an unfair situation. He actually accepted the challenge that he could completely refuse? Today, my mother-in-law came and I drank with her. It was a fair fight. I got drunk, but she didn't. I slept the whole afternoon. Chapter 2508. For a moment, all the forces and people felt that their brains were not enough to process this. Oh, I'm really confused. What's going on? Wasn't this development a little too ridiculous? What is Zue Wuqing trying to do? Dong Wuxiang stood in the sky outside the city, looking at the city with a serious expression. Brother Shang, do you think this is a trap for you? Mo asked worriedly. At the side, the majestic Li Xiongtu said, even if it is a trap, with Zue Wuqing's current strength, who can he trap? Dong Wuxiang may not be invincible in the world, but if he is determined to run away, no one in the current world can stop him. But this is not only the core of Heavenly Emperor Wuqing's authority, but also the headquarters of the saint. If he interferes personally, the consequences are unpredictable. Mo said worriedly. Most likely, the saint won't interfere. Dong Wuxiang said solemnly, in this year, the saint has been watching from the sidelines, wanting to know what we are up to. But that guy Mo Tianji has made the situation complicated and confusing. Apart from us, all the other forces are in a state of confusion. Now, Saint Monarch is unable to determine when and where he will make his move. With his character, he won't make his move rashly. Besides, there's another crucial reason. The Eastern Emperor is also secretly restraining him. Another crucial reason is, the Demon Empress has secretly left the Demon Emperor heaven. No one knows where she went. But the saint won't let his guard down. Because these 2 people are in the heavenly imperial court. They are the only 2 who can pose a threat to him. Facing us at the same time, there's also the Eastern Emperor Demon Empress who might be hiding nearby. The saint won't show himself unless he is absolutely confident. So, if he really fights with Zue Wuqing, there shouldn't be any unexpected risks. Dong Wuxiang said thoughtfully. But if you really fight Zue Wuqing alone, are you really confident? Mo was still worried. Dong Wuxiang smiled confidently and said indifferently, I have absolute confidence in this. Not to mention that my cultivation is on par with his, even if my cultivation is slightly weaker. I have absolute confidence in defeating him. Because I'm human. As for him, he's merely the sage's dog. Well said. Li Xiongtu said in a loud voice, Dong Wuxiang, you mustn't forget the battle agreement between you and me. Dong Wuxiang smiled. When you catch up to me, I can battle you anytime. It's a deal. Li Xiongtu's spirits were lifted. At this moment, Imperial City. Extreme Heaven Master Zue Wuqing stood with his hands behind his back, facing the throne he had sat on for hundreds of thousands of years. A beautiful woman stood beside him, full of worry. Dressed in the Empress's robe, she remained silent with him. Must we go? After a long time, the Empress finally asked softly. I'm definitely going. Drunk Merciless was expressionless. The Empress was silent again. After a long time, she opened her mouth again and said, Actually, if we don't fight, what else can we do? If you don't fight, Merciless Drunken muttered, you'll only end up worse off. That's good too. The Empress smiled sadly. It's been so many years. We're all tired. But we still can't let go, Merciless Drunken said indifferently. The muscles on his face twitched slightly. After this battle, we'll be able to let go. Even if we can't, we'll have to let go, right? The Empress seemed to have relaxed. There were tears on her face, but she smiled faintly. After this battle, we'll be able to let go. Merciless Drunken was silent for a long time before he sighed deeply. He reached out and pulled the Empress into his arms. After this battle, we'll be truly free, Merciless Drunken said softly. The Empress nodded with tears in her eyes. If there's an afterlife, we must be careful when making friends. Merciless Drunken's pupils contracted painfully. After a long time, he sighed. Is there an afterlife? He stood quietly for a while before he said, but he promised me that before this battle, you and the children will be truly free. Merciless Drunken said in a low voice, I'm waiting. As long as you're truly free, I'll fight. The Empress choked with sobs. Without you, even if the children and I are truly free, what will happen? At the very least, our future grandchildren will be able to decide their own fates. They won't just be a tool, a puppet. Merciless Drunken sighed softly. My fate has long been decided. He'll never set me free no matter what. I know too many things that I shouldn't know. My fate has long been decided. It has nothing to do with anyone. Back then, during the Purple Cloud Heaven incident, I almost died just because I disobeyed a single sentence. After all these years, I've had enough. The Empress sighed softly as tears streamed down her face. I've been a dog for 1,000,000 years. Merciless Drunken's face suddenly revealed a look of extreme hysteria. He gritted his teeth and the veins on his forehead bulged. He hissed, I've done enough too. If it weren't for you and the children, I might have. I've had enough of being cursed for over 1,000,000 years. Now, there's finally a suitable opportunity to be free. You don't have to persuade me. To me, this battle might be a gift from the heavens to relieve me of my pain. The Empress nodded with tears in her eyes. Who would have thought that the sworn brother, the one who helped you secure your position as the heavens and earth, would actually control you like this when you're heavily injured? Don't talk about that anymore. Merciless Drunken took a deep breath and stared into the sky. He said with some pain, from the beginning, he never had a good heart. He was never my brother. I don't have any friends or brothers in my life. Actually, I'm much more pitiful than Zihao. Dong Wuxiang. Merciless Drunken laughed bitterly and shook his head. His eyes were filled with desolation. Even if you can defeat me and kill me, but can you escape from his control? Especially in the extreme heaven. Right at this moment, a ray of light flashed in the sky without warning. It could be clearly seen that a few dark rays of light appeared in the sky, and then they broke with a bang. The moment they broke, the Empress suddenly groaned and spat out mouthfuls of blood. At the same time, the same sound of spitting out blood could be heard from other places in the palace. It was also mixed with a lot of groaning and groaning sounds that could not help but be heard. However, Merciless Drunken's face relaxed. The 10,000 saints' true spirit in you guys has indeed been removed. There was pain in his eyes. This time, he didn't lie to me. It turned out that the great extreme heaven emperor had been enslaved by someone from the beginning to the end. Even his wife and children were in the trap. With such restrictions, even though he had many confidants and many tricks that could turn the situation around, they were all useless. Obviously, the unexpected battle this time was also driven by the person behind the scenes. The extreme heaven emperor was just a puppet, nothing more. The Empress was still spitting out blood. Finally, after spitting out a mouthful of black blood, she sat down weakly and said listlessly, Yes, it has indeed been removed. But my heart is even emptier now. Merciless Drunken squatted down slowly and reached out his hand to gently wipe away the blood on the Empress's mouth. He stared at his wife for a long time without saying anything. The Empress also looked at her husband affectionately. Her beautiful eyes couldn't bear to leave him for even a moment. Both husband and wife thought of something. After a long while, Merciless Drunken stared into the Empress's eyes and said softly, "Now, I need you to cooperate with me to put on a show. Like this. You have to leave the Imperial City as fast as you can. Using an irrecoverable technique of changing one's bones to change one's appearance into something completely different from before. Then they disappear from this world. Remember, no one is allowed to leave the mountain in the future. You are not allowed to take revenge." The Empress collapsed on the ground and stared at her husband in a daze. Her eyes were filled with longing and reluctance. Tears flowed out of her eyes and she said in a trembling voice, "When the children are safe, my sisters and I will go and find you." Merciless Drunken took a deep breath and suddenly stood up, laughing to the sky. It has been removed. What's the use of removing it?" he shouted miserably, "now that we are at the end of the road. So what if we die? What can we do? If that's the case, why don't we die together?" His face turned indescribably ferocious and he suddenly roared, "All of you, die." He slapped out his palm. It hit the Empress's chest. The Empress was sent flying without making a sound. All the bones in her body cracked as if they were broken. Her body was still in midair, but her eyes were still staring at her husband in a daze. Not even blinking, tears welled up in Zui Wuqing's eyes and evaporated all of a sudden. He roared and flew out like lightning. Your Majesty, what happened to you?" The Extreme Heaven Guard heard the commotion and rushed in. But he was completely stunned by the scene in front of him. He saw that everyone in the hall was dead on the ground. And all of them were actually members of the imperial family, including the Empress, the Emperor, the Princess, the imperial grandsons. There were thousands of them. In this room that symbolized the imperial family, corpses were everywhere. Your Majesty! The guard leader looked at Merciless Drunken in disbelief. Your Majesty! Why is this happening? Chapter 2509. Zui Wuqing's face was contorted as his muscles twitched violently. Since there's no way out, what's the point of living? Instead of living to be humiliated, it's better to kill. Dying in my hands today is better than dying in someone else's hands. We'll walk the same path together, so that we won't be lonely in the netherworld. We'll die sooner or later, so the sooner we die, the sooner we can reincarnate. These extremely ruthless words caused the leader of the guards to tremble all over. That's right, but the people you killed are your loved ones. Drag them all to the burial ground outside the city. There's no need to send them to the imperial tomb. Zui Wuqing laughed hysterically. We're going to die anyway. Instead of being dug up and thrown into a mass grave, we might as well do it ourselves. That'll save us a lot of trouble. It's over. Ultimate heaven, it's over. So good. A heavenly emperor has gone mad. This was the only possibility the leader of the guards could think of. Hurry up and go. Do you want to be buried with them too? Zui Wuqing's eyes were bloodshot like a ghost's. I'll do it right away. The leader of the guards backed off in cold sweat, afraid that he would really be buried with them if he was too slow. Even though the heavenly emperor had gone mad, his strength was still equivalent to the Grim Reaper. A mad Grim Reaper was actually more terrifying than a sane one. The heavenly emperor Merciless, Zui Wuqing, had gone mad. Merciless, it only took a short while. He had personally slaughtered everyone in the imperial family. Every victim's death was too horrible to look at. This was why, including his wife who had been with him for 1,000,000 years and dozens of concubines, even the imperial grandson and so on. This shocking news spread throughout the entire imperial city almost immediately. Everyone felt as if thunder was roaring above their heads. How could this be? What was going on? When the imperial carriage came out with the corpses, hundreds of thousands of people gathered to watch. Everyone was in disbelief. However, they had no choice but to accept it. This was the truth. As expected of the heavenly Emperor Merciless, he really lives up to the word merciless. To think that he would even kill his own wife and child. This is truly heartless, to a certain extent. His original name was the most heartless. Just like his name, he is naturally the most heartless person in the world. The so-called madness is nothing more than this. It's easy to understand why he suddenly went crazy when he was at the end of his rope, mass grave. The bodyguard leader sighed. Although the imperial order could not be disobeyed, the imperial order could not be disobeyed. These people died without entering the imperial mausoleum. However, he couldn't just leave his corpse in the wilderness, right? Bury them all. He waved his hands sadly. Let them rest in peace. Dust flew everywhere, and everyone was buried in a huge pit. On that night, a sudden storm engulfed the entire imperial city. The torrential rain poured down crazily, almost drowning the entire imperial city. There was no one on the other side. It was so dark that he couldn't even see his fingers. A figure flashed in the pitch-black darkness and disappeared. No one noticed. However, on the second day, someone made an unexpected discovery. The corpses of the royal family members who had just been properly buried in the graveyard had all disappeared without a trace. Well, it wasn't that their whereabouts were unknown because someone seemed to have dug up the graves. Those corpses that were originally in human form had now become piles of rotten flesh. The degree of cruelty of the scene was unimaginable. It made one's hair stand on end. However, when this news reached the ears of the victim, Zue Wuqing, this heavenly emperor merciless actually acted as heartless as ever. Zue Wuqing was indeed Zue Wuqing, the most heartless. Facing the guard leader who came to report, he opened his eyes indifferently and said, "What's the big deal about this? It's worthy of such a serious report. The people are already dead. It's fine if they're dead. Won't the corpses turn into minced meat sooner or later? What's the big deal about their graves being dug up? Do they have burial items with them? Arrest the murderer? Why do we have to arrest the murderer? What kind of murderer are you if you lay your hands on the dead? Now that the extreme heaven is in troubled times, is it worth wasting manpower and resources on such trivial matters? Looking for trouble." The guard leader's entire body turned cold, his eyes filled with disbelief. He looked at the heavenly emperor that he had been loyal to his whole life as if he was looking at a monster. For the first time in his life, he looked at him face to face like this. It was this person that made him loyal to him for a lifetime. It turned out that this person was actually so heartless and cold by nature. In this lifetime, he was simply blind. He actually didn't see that this person was actually such a person in his bones. "What are you looking at? What's there to look at?" Zue Wuqing glared and said, "Do you believe that I'll kill you if you continue to look?" The guard leader returned to silence, bowed, and left without saying a word. He forcefully suppressed his chest that was about to explode. He silently walked out of the palace and came to the mass grave alone. Facing the mountain of corpses and the sea of blood, he solemnly kowtowed. Then he began to collect all the scattered flesh and blood. With one punch, he punched a deep hole in the mass grave. He jumped into the hole and continuously used his tyrannical cultivation to bombard the ground. It was as if he wanted to completely penetrate the ground under his feet. He didn't know how deep it was. At the very least, a depth of several thousand feet was definitely there. He leaped up a few times in a row and buried all the pieces of flesh he had just collected into this deep hole. Then, a lot of the surrounding soil was moved over by him. Even a few mountains were directly carried over by him. He ruthlessly smashed it in. Finally, he used his tyrannical cultivation to turn this place into a flat ground. Then he knelt down again. "Empress, imperial concubine, Your Highness, from now on, you can rest in peace. This mausoleum, it's very deep and very safe. No one will disturb your peace anymore. That's all I can do. I hope that in your next life, you won't get to know that heartless person. I wish you all the best." He fiercely kowtowed again. Without using any cultivation to protect his body, his forehead was dripping with blood. "In this lifetime, I was wrong. I was really wrong. I shouldn't have been loyal to him. I'm leaving. I hope you all can rest in peace." He stood up, and his lonely figure flew into the air. In just a flash, he had already disappeared from this world. From then on, no one saw this high-level Saints Guard leader again. In fact, he had even lost interest in the upcoming battle of the century between two kings. There were still 2 days until the night of the full moon. Now, the entire extreme sky was filled with the feeling of an impending storm. That pressure made everyone feel heavy and breathless. It was a feeling that they could collapse at any time. Outside the city, Great Emperor Wuxiang's army arrived as scheduled. Inside the city, the battlefield at the peak of the imperial city was ready. This battle was unavoidable. This day had finally arrived. The night of the last night was about to arrive. Half of the bright moon's body was already exposed. Cold light began to sprinkle on the ground. Dong Wuxiang's burly figure appeared under the moonlight. He strode out of his tent. He walked resolutely toward his target, the imperial city. The heavy black saber. As usual, it was on his shoulder. It flickered with a cold light. There were only 3 people accompanying him. Mo Lei Li Xiong. At this time, GMO finally stopped hiding his existence. However, he still used another appearance and appeared in the identity of Dong Wuxiang's guard. Countless people had even started to occupy good viewing positions since a few days ago, preparing to watch this battle of the pinnacle. The bright moon rose slowly. The final battle was approaching. With a long roar, a bright yellow figure that seemed to emit thousands of rays of golden light appeared first under the bright moon, on top of the tallest palace in the imperial city. His entire person was like the sun, emitting a light that ruled the world. Heavenly Emperor Wuxiang, Zui Wuxiang. He was already prepared and waiting for the arrival of the challenger. However, if the current Zui Wuxiang was still like the sun, he was only like the setting sun. The setting sun was like blood, but it was past its prime. The moment they saw Zui Wuxiang's majestic figure appear, in an inconspicuous dark corner outside the city, a few women in ragged clothes looked at the heavenly Emperor Wuxiang in the sky without blinking. Suddenly, tears streamed down their faces. Even if they were exposed in front of others, they believed that no one would believe that these ugly women with swollen bodies without any beauty were actually the heavenly Emperor Wuxiang's empress and his concubines. They had already turned themselves into this. Although Zui Wuxiang had strict requirements, they were still worried. They must watch this battle to the end. This is the last, the only chance we have in our lives to see you. We won't let you go. We definitely won't let you go. At the peak of the imperial city, Zui Wuxiang stood there. With his hands behind his back, he stood in the sky in a leisurely and carefree manner. Under the moonlight, his gaze was just so calm as he looked at the distant night sky. At this moment, everyone could clearly feel one thing, and that was that the disputes in the world, the blood-stained Jianghu, the powerful enemies, and the love and hatred that filled the world, all of these had nothing to do with him anymore. He stood alone at the peak that symbolized the power of the extreme heaven, quietly standing there, with his hands behind his back. In the distance, Dong Wuxiang, who was gradually approaching, couldn't help but pause the moment his gaze met Zui Wuxiang's figure. This situation shouldn't have happened, but the person on the other side was just too strange. The person in front of him didn't seem to belong to the human world. Nor did he belong to the heavens. He belonged to a blank space. Absolute emptiness, absolute nothingness, and absolute illusion. But did it mean that he didn't exist? At this moment, Zui Wuxiang's voice came from afar. Dong Wuxiang, come. Chapter 25:10. Everyone's eyes followed Zui Wuxiang's gaze and looked in the same direction. In the distance, a long roar could be heard. There was no need to see the person. Just by hearing this long roar, everyone suddenly felt as if their blood was boiling. That indescribable majestic aura and heroic spirit surged through the air with this long howl and fiercely smashed into everyone's chests and hearts. Everyone could feel that there was only one person coming. However, everyone could feel that this magnificent aura that could swallow the world should be the gathering of all the rivers, lakes, and seas in the world, and rolling over like a 10,000-meter high tide. It was as if all the mountains in the world had lined up and came crashing down. That mighty and majestic aura was simply shocking. Even though they hadn't seen him in person, that aura was already enough to overwhelm others with a show of strength. Zui Wuqing's eyes shone with a strange light. He stood tall and said with his hands behind his back, "Dong Wushang? You're here?" All of a sudden, the sky in the south trembled. Then, a black figure suddenly appeared in the southern sky. His black robes fluttered in the wind. He slowly raised his head and said, "It's me. Of course I'm here." This black figure suddenly appeared in the south of the city. When he first appeared, he was just a small black dot. But for some reason, the moment he spoke, everyone around the city felt as if they had been suffocated. At the same time, they found it difficult to breathe. It was as if an infinitely large shadow had suddenly shrouded the sky above them. That majestic aura seemed to have emerged from the bottom of their hearts. It was suffocating. "Of course I'm here." This was a simple sentence. The confidence, dominance, and arrogance that came with it was as if it could swallow the world. For a moment, everyone was silent. Everyone's attention was focused on that black figure. From afar, he walked over from the sky as if he was walking on flat ground. With every step he took, everyone felt that the pressure on their bodies had increased, and the suffocating feeling had intensified. He walked forward with large strides in the sky. Every step he took covered a distance of several hundred feet. He glided through the air, but it didn't seem fast at all. The pitch-black hilt of Changban's saber protruded from his shoulder. Compared to an ordinary saber hilt, it had to be twice as thick. Dong Wushang was not fat, but it was so majestic that it was hard to believe. As he moved, his shoulders didn't move in the slightest, but it gave off the feeling of a deep abyss and a lofty mountain pressing down on him. Just by watching him walk over step by step, facing the entire army and experts of the imperial city, everyone felt that even if all of them joined forces, they wouldn't be able to stop him. There was simply no way to block it. Dong Wushang's eyes never paid attention to anyone else. His eyes were only focused on one person. Drunk without mercy. Such an imposing manner. This is truly rare since ancient times. In the city, someone sighed from the bottom of his heart. This sentence. Without a doubt, this was what everyone was thinking. Most of the people who dared to watch the battle here were experts, and they were also first-class powerhouses. They had lived for a long time, but they had never seen a person in this world with such a natural, domineering, and majestic aura. When he was only 1,000 feet away from the tallest building in the imperial city, Dong Wushang stopped in his tracks. He stood in the air. He raised his head slightly, and his eyes instantly turned into two sharp swords as he looked at Drunk Without Mercy. Drunk Without Mercy straightened his body and looked back without retreating. For pairs of eyes met instantly. And everyone who saw this scene felt as if space had suddenly collapsed, as if even the entire imperial city was shaking because of it. But when they opened their eyes to look, it was clear that nothing had happened. Was it an illusion? Did everyone have the same illusion at the same time? Heavenly Emperor Merciless, are you ready for today's battle? Dong Wushang stood quietly in the air, his black clothes fluttering wildly as if they were about to turn into a black cloud that covered the sky. He took the lead to speak. Drunk Without Mercy said solemnly, "I'm only waiting for you to come here and fight to end this life." "Good." Dong Wushang roared to the sky. He reached out and already held the handle of his dark saber. With a roar and a raise of his hand, the whole world was silent for a moment, shocked for a moment. Then, a black rainbow suddenly appeared in the air. Dong Wushang had already drawn his saber and became one with it, turning into a shooting star in the sky, arriving at the peak of the imperial city. He raised his saber above his head and shouted, "1,000 mountains slash." The saber slashed down with a loud bang. The saber was awe-inspiring. The moment the saber fell with the power of thunder and lightning, Dong Wushang's afterimage in the distance had yet to dissipate. And a burst of sword light also flew out like an explosion. Clang! A muffled sound rang out. Dong Wushang's body rose into the air, but a strange color flashed across his eyes. Because, at the moment when the saber and sword clashed, Drunk without mercy said something in a low voice, and it went into Dong Wuxiang's ears in a secret way. My path has already come to an end. Today's battle will end with only death. But, you have to hear me out, you have to hear me out. My life ends today, but the fate of this continent should not end. I've been a dog for 1,000,000 years, but I've also been a celestial emperor for 1,000,000 years. Even if I'm annihilated, I have to do something for this continent. Dong Wuxiang was stunned. What did this mean? Just as he was thinking, he saw Drunk without mercy laughing wildly. His body rose into the air, and in the blink of an eye, he turned into a huge giant. The sword light swallowed thousands of feet, fiercely coming down with a power that shook the heavens and the earth. Seeing this, Dong Wuxiang was furious. Without thinking about anything else, his body swayed, and he also turned into a giant, tit for tat, not backing down. The dark saber turned into a huge black dragon, meeting the sword rain in the sky. I also don't want to be a dog. But there's no other way. I've been Cloud Master's 10,000 Saints' true spirit for a long time. This was another message. Dong Wuxiang was shocked when he heard this. His attack slowed down a little. At this point, the two had already exchanged 3 moves. The saber light and sword light in the air were as bright as huge fireworks. Continue fighting. Don't stop. Don't hold back. Drunk without mercy's body was like a dragon. With a long roar, he took the lead and soared into the sky. Dong Wuxiang's dark saber was like a dragon, following closely behind. Why? Dong Wuxiang asked through telepathy. Drunk without mercy's long sword danced like the wind. It turned into a ball of light, surrounding Dong Wuxiang like a storm. Like mercury flowing down the ground, the attacks were non-stop, penetrating every opening. No one wants to be a dog. And no one wants to be a dog for life. In the intense battle, the conversation between the two continued. But in the eyes of outsiders, the intensity of the battle was already earth-shattering. Around them, the space collapsed and reassembled. The cycle repeated. Although the moon hung high in the sky, the moonlight was also intermittent. There's a reason for a good man to be a dog. After 1,000,000 years, I've finally come to freedom. It's finally time for me to be free. Drunken Wu Qing's calm voice was filled with other meanings. The bitterness in his voice was so thick that it was almost tangible. There was a loud explosion in the air. The entire earth started to shake with the sound of the explosion. Many things on the ground jumped up with a bang. This was the first time the black saber and the sword of the heavenly emperor of ruthlessness met. It was a real, unpretentious, all-out collision. Dong Wuxiang's body instantly floated back in the air. Drunk without mercy also flew back. In this fight, neither side had the upper hand. After the two of them retreated, before they could completely stop their retreat, they had already forcefully reversed the momentum and fiercely flew back, fighting once again. But the conversation between the two did not stop. Below, many cultivation experts were looking up to watch. They were all in awe and admiration. As expected of His Majesty, the heavenly emperor who leads a part of the world. Just this level of cultivation alone is enough to make ghosts cry and gods tremble. Watching today's battle has really benefited me a lot. I'm afraid there's no hope for such a realm in this lifetime. That's right. But to be able to watch such a fierce battle in my lifetime, this trip has not been in vain. In the air, the two of them each made strange moves, not giving in to each other. They were like two dragons overturning rivers and seas, fighting until the sky was dark and the earth was dark. 1,000,000 years ago, I, drunk without mercy, was as famous as the Cloud Master, Shui Leihan, Zihao Yaoexen, and the rest. The Cloud Master was my sworn brother. We came from the same city and depended on each other. He was older than me, so I respected him as my brother. Yuan Tianjie and I were 3 brothers. A sworn brother who kowtowed until his head bled and burned until it burned. We were so close that there were no secrets between us. Or it could be said that I had no secrets from the two of them. At that time, we, Shui Leihan and Zihao, could be said to be sworn enemies. But in the end, we all became heavenly emperors. Speaking of which, I was the first person to discover that Yuan Tianjie was an extraterrestrial demon. It was on a certain day. I suddenly discovered that Yuan Tianjie was actually an extraterrestrial demon. My close brother was actually not of my race. I was furious about this and immediately went to inform the Cloud Master, wanting to join forces with him to kill the demon. Ha! Drunk without mercy laughed bitterly. Dong Wuxiang's expression remained unchanged, but he was sighing inexplicably in his heart. It must have been at that time that something happened. The Cloud Master was also filled with righteous indignation on the surface. The two of us discussed how to get rid of Yuan Tianjie, this extraterrestrial demon, without affecting our reputation. Although we were sworn brothers, since he was not of our race, his heart would definitely be different. How could he work together with the demon? At that time, everyone would be embarrassed. That night, the Cloud Master suggested a plan, and I agreed. So, the next day, we set off together. This matter was confidential, so naturally, it couldn't be known to outsiders. So the two of us went alone. But after leaving the extreme heaven, the Cloud Master suddenly used extreme means to restrain me. Chapter 25:11. At first, I thought that he had some difficulties, such as wanting to eliminate Yuan Tianjie by himself or something. But later, I found out that wasn't the case. When he took me to a secret villa, I was shocked to find that my parents, family, wives, children, and all my concubines were all there. Right in front of me, Master Yun used the extremely cruel cultivation method of the myriad holiness true devil to turn my entire family into his myriad holiness true spirits. What kind of pain was that? There are my birth parents, my wife, my beloved daughter, all my family members. He forced me to become his thousand saints' true spirit. If I didn't agree, he would kill my father and control my wives' and concubines' minds to have sex with other men. Without any other choice, I could only agree. Zui Wuqing's eyes were red. He attacked crazily as he talked about the biggest secret and the biggest shame in the world. I'm his sworn brother. For so many years, I risked my life for him. I used my body and my life to block too many fatal threats for him. But in the end, I was treated like this. I couldn't accept it. I really couldn't accept it. Why did he treat me like this? Zui Wuqing laughed bitterly. Do you know? It was from that moment onwards that I turned from the celestial emperor, who was respected by everyone in the Heaven Tower, into Lord Yun's dog. He became my sworn brother's dog. At that time, I had just joined forces to kill the Myriad Saints' true devil, but in the blink of an eye, the Myriad Saints' true devil was killed. But in the blink of an eye, I became the Thousand Saints' true spirit. Isn't that the biggest irony? Dong Wuqing was sad. In that situation, Zui Wuqing was really in a dilemma. All his family members were controlled. Even he was in the hands of others. Even if he wanted to commit suicide, he couldn't. What could he do? Then, under his control, he made me write a bullshit letter of repentance. He made up countless heartless things and made me write them down myself. He controlled my body and made me rape and pillage. He made me commit all kinds of crimes and kill the loyal. He killed the innocent. And he only had evidence of my crimes. He made me walk step by step into the abyss he had set for me, but I was unable to extricate myself from it. I am the celestial emperor of a generation. But his mind was controlled by someone to rape women. My persistence, my self-respect, my dignity, all my beliefs. Everything happened at that moment. It collapsed with a loud crash. I've become a complete walking corpse. But I can't die yet, because all my family members are still under his control. If I die, my clansmen and all my family members will be finished. There will be no tomorrow, no future. There's no hope left. A muffled groan. Dong Wuxiang suddenly retreated with a roar, and Zui Wuqing did the same. On their bodies, blood spurted out from all of them, and they were all injured. In the next moment, the two of them fought fiercely again without caring about their injuries. After that, during the Purple Cloud Heavens incident, I wanted to send out troops, but I was firmly suppressed by Master Yun. Moreover, at that time, my most beloved emperor suddenly died, and my old father suddenly died of a serious illness. I knew that it was all a warning to me. Anyway, I was already a sinner. I couldn't care less about the purple cloud heavens incident. But I still secretly sent someone to send a letter to Xue Leihan. I didn't expect Xue Leihan to be in seclusion at that time, and the person I sent was also brutally killed by Great General Bai of the Eastern Emperor. He even reported it to the Saint Lord. Only then did I know that Cloud Master's minions were all around the Celestial Emperors. Because of that one letter, I was tortured again. Since then, I didn't dare to do anything rash. I couldn't bear the blow of losing more family members. For millions of years, I've lived like a dog without any dignity. Although in the eyes of others, I'm shining brightly, but I know that every moment is worse than death. It's all humiliation and pain. Until today. Before this battle, Cloud Master suddenly sent me a message asking me to fight. Moreover, he wanted to know what your motive was. Moreover, he wanted me to die in your hands so that you could smoothly become the new Celestial Emperor of the ultimate heaven. Then, he would use the method he used to deal with me to control you and the forces behind you. In fact, it's not difficult to control you. As long as he controls your wife, he can control you. As long as he controls you, he can further control the forces behind you. He even guessed that there's a huge force behind you that's still in hiding. That includes the forces of the Eastern Emperor and the Demon Empress that he doesn't know about. As long as I die in your hands, you'll naturally become the Celestial Emperor of the ultimate heaven. As long as you're in the ultimate heaven, you won't be able to escape from his control. At that time, when he controls you, he'll be able to take over the hidden forces behind you bit by bit. Moreover, there's a high chance that he'll control the Eastern Emperor and the Demon Empress as well. They'll become his slaves just like me. As long as you don't know anything, he'll have the opportunity to do so. Zue Wuqing spoke faster and faster as if he was venting the humiliation and anger he had accumulated over the past 1,000,000 years. The two of them attacked faster and faster, and the battle became more and more intense. Both of them were already covered in blood. However, as Dong Wushang listened, he felt a chill in his heart. He felt as if a venomous snake was crawling on his back, and his hair stood on end. What would happen if Zue Wuqing didn't betray him and strictly followed the great sage's orders? Once Simile was really under his control, how could he not give in? If he really gave in, what about his brothers? Would they be spared? Dong Wushang didn't even dare to think about the consequences. However, he was very sure of one thing. What Zue Wuqing said now was definitely true. This was something that could be clearly felt. Continue to fight. Don't hold back. If you can kill me, do it quickly. It doesn't matter if I can't finish talking. As long as there's a chance, kill me in one go. Zue Wuqing's voice suddenly became urgent. Pay attention, I can feel that Master Yun is here. He's hiding in the dark. My death is certain. He's definitely going to reap the harvest he sowed 1,000,000 years ago. He's watching our battle. Don't reveal any flaws. You're still useful to him now, so he won't kill you. However, if he finds out that you know his secret, he'll definitely take your life and kill everyone related to you. Dong Wushang roared and swung his dark saber. It was as if he was risking his life, bringing with him a domineering aura. His heart, however, was dry and bitter. The last thing I want to tell you. Zue Wuqing's voice became softer. There are a total of 3 places where the great sage cultivated the 10,000 saints' true spirit. One of them is in the terrifying forest of the Heavenly Stem Mountain. I only know of this place. There are 2 other places that I don't know about, but there must be 2 more. The great sage's real palace was never in the so-called Holy Emperor's Palace. It's located somewhere else, but I don't know the exact location. The Holy Emperor's Palace is just a facade where Xue Xian occasionally stays. However, what Xue Xian has here is only a doppelganger. There's one more thing to take note of. This woman, Xue Xian, is not inferior to Lord Yun in terms of viciousness and treachery. Moreover, she will do anything to achieve her goals. This woman is the same as Lord Yun. Don't be deceived by her appearance. Tell Shui Leihan to pass on a message to Zi Xiaotian for me. Zhu Wuqing wielded his sword crazily. I'm sorry. Dong Wushang hurriedly sent him a telepathic message. Then, your family? I didn't kill them. The reason why I was humiliated for 1,000,000 years was because of them. How could I really kill them? Zue Wuqing's sharp eyes revealed a trace of relief. They've already left this troublesome place. Releasing all the restrictions on them and only controlling myself is my condition for this attack. I know what you're thinking and what you want to do. However, I can't tell you where they are. I don't dare to trust anyone in this world now. It's the same for you. You can only leave them to their own devices. After I die, you won't be able to destroy my real soul. You can only become nourishment for Lord Yun. When the time comes, Lord Yun will be even more terrifying. This is actually one of the reasons why he wants me dead. It's not just because he has a replacement like you. Being able to stab him in the back before I die, I'll die happy. Pa. Zue Wuqing let out an extremely shrill howl. Suddenly, he somersaulted a few times in the air and stood at the peak of the imperial city far away. His bright yellow robe was already soaked in blood. Dong Wushang also staggered, but immediately steadied himself in the air. He knew that Zue Wuqing had already said what he wanted to say. Now, Zue Wuqing was going to have a real battle of life and death with him. Dong Wushang. Zue Wuqing stood there and let out a long howl. His entire body emitted a crazy murderous aura. If we continue fighting like this, even if we fight for another day and night, we won't be able to determine the winner. Dong Wushang, since you want this position, then show me what you've got. Fight to the death with me. Zhe Wuqing laughed wildly. The winner is the king. Don't complain that you're dying in my hands. Dong Wushang held his saber in front of his chest and said indifferently, Today, you must die. Zhe Wuqing laughed mockingly. Is that so? I don't think so. Try it. Dong Wushang moved and was about to strike. Wait. Zue Wuqing waved his hand. Dong Wushang, since we're about to fight to the death, then I'd like to ask you a question. I believe that at this moment, you won't lie to me. His voice spread far and wide. Everyone who was watching the battle was shaken. Chapter 25:12. It was at such a time that the opponent was more likely to reveal the truth. And this mantra would be a shocking piece of news to the entire world. Everyone pricked up their ears, fearing that they would miss a single word. Dong Wushang said in a low voice, Ask. Zue Wuqing lowered his sword and said, Dong Wushang, I'll only ask you, who's behind you? Logically speaking, there's no reason for you to develop so quickly. Someone must be playing tricks. Tell me, who is it? Dong Wushang said disdainfully, You're the one who turned extreme heaven into a rotten stall. You didn't participate in the battle of purple cloud heavens, so you've already lost the right to be the celestial emperor in the hearts of the world. That's why I'm able to rally the troops this time. There's no one behind me at all. If there's anyone, it's only heaven's will and the hearts of the people. Haha, only someone like you who plays tricks every day would have such an unbearable idea. Dong Wushang stood with his sword and said proudly, Dong Wushang, with the blood in my chest, my manhood, my bones, and the sword in my hand. Don't tell me I still need someone to help me. Dong Wushang's words were naturally filled with a kind of arrogance that looked down on the world. Someone cheered loudly, Good. Paul said. Zue Wuqing laughed mockingly and said, Don't tell me the Tianji Intelligence Department isn't your people? Dong Wushang was silent for a while and said mockingly, Tianji Intelligence Department? They're indeed my people, but they're my enemies. Why, are you trying to shirk the responsibility of losing the battle? All right, as long as you think so, then so be it. Although Dong Wushang said so, everyone who heard it, even Sage Yun Shangren who was watching the battle in the dark didn't think so at all. These words really lacked the basic sincerity. Zue Wuqing was furious. Dong Wushang, I'm talking to you because I think you're a hero. Don't use such a tone to humiliate me. He roared. Today's battle will determine the ruler of extreme heaven. Could it be? You, Dong Wuxiang, won't even tell the truth? Dong Wuxiang said indifferently, I, Dong Wuxiang, despise lying the most. But you are an exception. You watched the heavenly fiends enter the purple cloud heavens, but you remained indifferent. Hundreds of millions of lives were plunged into misery and suffering, yet you watched coldly from the sidelines. Do I need to treat him courteously? You're not worthy. Drunken Wu Qing roared and raised his sword. His face was ferocious. If that's the case, then let's fight to the death. Of course I'm here to fight to the death. Dong Wuxiang slowly raised his saber. Don't tell me I've come here just to chat with you? As I said before, you're not worthy. Both of them knew that Cloud Master was coveting them. Therefore, his words were watertight and he did not dare to show the slightest bit of negligence. But Dong Wuxiang was sighing from the bottom of his heart. As for the current Zue Wu Qing, he did not want to kill him at all, but he had to. They had no choice but to kill him. Furthermore, clearly, Zue Wu Qing had nothing left to live for. He did not want to live anymore. It was just as he had said. I've been a dog for a lifetime, and I've had enough. Before he died, he wanted to be a proper human being. And Dong Wuxiang had to give it to him. There had never been a moment or a person who could make Dong Wuxiang hate him so much. Cloud Master. These 3 words made Dong Wuxiang hate him to the core. Who would have thought that this sanctimonious His Majesty, who had always occupied the throne of the #1 person in the Heaven Imperial Court, was actually such a sinister, vicious, heartless, deranged, despicable and shameless fake emperor bastard. Even if all the derogatory words in the world were used to describe him, they would not be able to describe how despicable he was. Dong Wuxiang had always been a clean killer. He never used a second slash. Even if it was an enemy, he would not let them suffer. But at this moment, Dong Wuxiang felt that if he were to let Cloud Master die a quick death one day, that would be an unforgivable sin. Dong Wuxiang. Drunken Wu Qing's body floated up slowly. In midair, he waved his sword wildly. In the blink of an eye, a sword mountain that could hold up the heavens and reach the earth appeared in the sky, connecting the heavens and the earth. It was 10,000 feet tall. In the entire world, the bright moon suddenly disappeared without a trace. It was as if there was only this huge and majestic mountain of swords in this world, lying across this place. It was emitting a dense and deadly murderous aura. Obviously, this was Drunken Wu Qing's desperate move. A sword that could reach 10,000 miles. He believed that even if a saint were to face this sword, he wouldn't be able to treat it lightly and would have to temporarily avoid it. The saint in the dark heaved a sigh of relief. Since Drunken Wu Qing was so desperate, it seemed like there would not be any big problems with the arrangements. The only one he had to worry about now was Dong Wuxiang. Dong Wuxiang had only been in the world for a few years. Although his cultivation had reached an extremely high level and his fighting skills were also very good, could he really fight against the heavenly emperor of the ultimate heaven, Drunken Wu Qing, who had made his name 1,000,000 years ago? If Dong Wuxiang was unable to withstand Drunken Wu Qing's ultimate move in the end, then half of his plan would fall through in an instant. There was nothing more wonderful in the world than this. At this moment, as the enemy, Superior Cloud, was actually worried about Dong Wuxiang's life, Dong Wuxiang took a deep breath. His tall and sturdy body seemed to have grown even bigger at this moment. His body was faintly emitting a faint purple light. This was a unique phenomenon when one's cultivation had been raised to the limit. He understood that Drunken Wu Qing was forcing him to kill Drunken Wu Qing. He did not even leave Dong Wuxiang any leeway. This was because there was only one outcome to this move. If you don't die, then I die. If you, Dong Wuxiang, are soft-hearted and don't want to kill me, then you can only die under this move of mine. In any case, I absolutely won't hold back. After this move is used, even if I want to hold back, it will be impossible. So, if you don't want to die and want to live, you can only kill me. You can only go all out. And this last move of mine will also be the last bit of brilliance I leave in this world. Legend. This is the last bit of dignity I, Drunken Wu Qing, have left in this world. Please don't blaspheme it. Drunken Wu Qing did not speak anymore. But Dong Wuxiang completely understood what he meant. He understood it more thoroughly than he heard it. Dong Wuxiang naturally did not want to die. So, whether it was for himself, for his family, for his brothers, or for drunken Wu Qing's final wish, even he had to win against this move. If he lost, not only would he let himself down, he would also let down his opponent. When two tigers fought, there would definitely be death for one. Dong Wuxiang moved his feet slightly and slowly raised his dark saber. Dong Wuxiang's eyes turned into two black holes that could devour heaven and earth. Merciless saber. This saber was decisive. Not only was it decisive, it was to sever everything. The majestic sword mountain in the sky suddenly moved. Once it moved, it would collapse. Collapse the world. Everyone within a radius of several thousand miles could clearly see this scene. The mountain peak in the sky that was completely composed of long swords and sword chi suddenly turned into countless streaks of sword chi that filled the world. It was as if 1 trillion shooting stars had suddenly appeared in the night sky. So much so that everyone seemed to have heard a loud boom in their hearts. That was the sound of an earth-shattering storm. At this moment, the entire world seemed to have disappeared with this boom. There was only destruction. In this battle, there were tens of thousands of spectators. Before this move, everyone felt that it was very beneficial. After watching this battle, their martial cultivation would definitely be able to improve further and reach a higher level. But at this moment when the sword mountain collapsed, at least half of the people suddenly felt that the martial spirit in their hearts had collapsed. Their hearts shook. At the moment when the sword mountain collapsed, his lifelong belief in martial arts vanished without a trace. The sudden collapse of the sword mountain also collapsed their spirits at the same time. From that moment onwards, these people would not have the slightest bit of improvement in their martial realms for the rest of their lives. In fact, no matter how hard he studied and practiced, he couldn't prevent himself from regressing day by day and becoming dispirited step by step. The reason was because of this move, this moment, this instant. A heavenly emperor of a generation went all out in a desperate move. It was truly world-shaking, shocking and terrifying. Not only did it have a destructive effect on one's physical body, it also had a collapsing effect on one's spirit and divine sense. In a distant corner, in the shadows, the few ugly women watched as Zui Wuqing's body turned into a magnificent mountain of swords and collapsed overnight. Tears welled up in their eyes and flowed freely down their cheeks. How could the woman who had slept beside him for hundreds of thousands of years not know what kind of mentality her man had right now? After this move, there would no longer be a heavenly emperor Wu Qing in this world. Zui Wuqing would no longer exist. Once and for all. Husband. The women looked at the crisscrossing streams of light in the sky in a daze. They opened their mouths and called out silently. At this moment, they were heartbroken and heartbroken. Dong Wuxiang's shout shook the vast sky the moment the sword mountain collapsed. His tall and sturdy body stood upright and didn't move. Then he suddenly spun the black saber in his hand, and an unprecedented tornado suddenly took shape. It seemed as if it could reach the heaven and earth. Then, Dong Wuxiang's figure completely disappeared. There was only a tiny, shining piece of the black saber that was only the length of a chopstick left on the spot. However, the radiance on this saber was unprecedented and unparalleled. Many martial artists saw the light emitted by this saber by chance, but they could only cry out in pain. Blood kept flowing out of their eyes. But they had already been attacked by the saber energy inadvertently. Even though they were thousands of feet away from this space, it was still the same. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Immortal Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.